Left my fiancée due to her abusive family. Weeks later, she's gone forever. I uncovered affairs and lies that shattered our entire friend group. I've been dating my fiancée for 4 years and engaged for 7 months. We were trying to arrange our wedding for the fall of next year. To put it plainly, her childhood was horrific. Her parents were raving narcissists, and she became the scapegoat for her 2 brothers. She was abused and expelled the moment she turned 18. However, she was an excellent student and a diligent worker. With several scholarships and part-time work, she established a successful profession and became self-sufficient. The trouble, however, was that she maintained communication with her family. None of them have changed. In fact, they have grown more financially reliant on her. They gradually re-entered her life, emotionally blackmailing her for support. They're not happy about it either. They're rude, condescending, and generally enjoy being a nuisance, but my fiancée can't say no, no matter what terrible things they say or how blatantly they try to intimidate her. I've always been aware of her family history and have supported her in dealing with it. However, during the last year, they've grown significantly more aggressive and disruptive. They are becoming increasingly frequent visitors to our home, leaving messes everywhere. Her mother behaves like Cinderella's stepmother. Her father consumes all of my beer and depletes half of the refrigerator, and her brothers pay visits sometimes, serving as mouthpieces for their parents. They practically trashed the place and left us to clean it up. Meanwhile, my fiancée is standing quietly in the corner, virtually shivering. I'm no fool. I understand the legitimate trauma and her desire to feel loved by them. She hopes they will eventually appreciate her. In case you were wondering, she has been in therapy for years to address this. For over 2 years, I've attempted to set boundaries and push these people away, but this is her house. She bought it. And no matter what my financial or emotional contributions are, she won't let me have a say in who comes over. She recently informed me that she wants to gain their acceptance, that they were correct about her, and that she must improve for their sake. We've had several emotional chats, full of tears and begging, in the hopes that she'll take action to improve. However, she is an adult, and I cannot force her to do anything. I love her, but I can't help but be resentful of what she's doing. It's heartbreaking to see someone you care about, who deserves so much better, blatantly ruin themselves for individuals like her family. I've tried numerous times to help her escape their grasp, but I have to think of our future. What happens when we have children? What happens if she is postpartum and invites them over? What if there is a medical emergency or our funds are short and they continue to demand money? This is the in-law family from hell, and I'll be unable to avoid them. Tomorrow, I'll inform her that I want to postpone the wedding until definite boundaries are created. If she resents it, I will leave. I can't take it any longer. I refuse to see this creeping devastation. Update. I spoke with her and everything went as expected. I'm now staying in a motel for a few days while planning my long-term move. There's still a lot going on right now, but perhaps by next week I'll be able to compile everything into a single update. Update 1. The night after I posted the first post, I decided to have a conversation with my fiancée regarding her family. However, she returned from work early the next day, and as I was already off that day, I started the conversation earlier than I had intended. Essentially, I warned her that this arrangement was unsustainable. I did not feel comfortable marrying her because of how involved her family is in her life, and I certainly did not feel good bringing a child into the world with them present. I didn't want to advise her to break off communication with them totally, but I did ask for strong restrictions on when they could come over and what they could do around the home. I also requested couples treatment before getting married. She was not pleased. She simply stared at me fiercely as I spoke, then began shrieking after I finished. She said I didn't understand their relationship, but it worked for her. I told her they were abusive users who would bleed her dry, and I had never seen them treat her with kindness. She reacted by claiming she simply needed to work harder for people to appreciate her. I basically yelled back that a child shouldn't have to beg, plead, or work to be loved by their parents. Finally, I informed her that either she established limits for them or I'd walk. She was furious, and as I was living in her home, I was booted out. I've been staying at a hotel for the past few days and my belongings have been taken out and stored. Frankly, it's been fantastic. I want to spend a few weeks with my family around mid-July before commencing house shopping on my own. I've spent the last few days relaxing, catching up on movies and video games that I hadn't had time for, and returning home to a peaceful room without her family tearing it apart. Things finally came to a head yesterday. We've had almost no contact since she kicked me out, but I know her family loves to spend the afternoon at her house every Saturday, and she generally uses me as a shield from their abuse. In a pretty selfish action, I simply left my phone muted all day and listened *Disco Elysium*. I knew she'd call for help with her family, but at this point sheer hatred had set in, and I didn't want to deal with her concerns. By the end of the night, she'd texted me over a dozen times and left 2 desperate voicemails urging me to come home. I decided to go over and check on her. Long story short, she was sobbing in the living room, and when I approached her, she literally crushed my back, clinging and crying. I waited for her to calm down before asking what had happened. Apparently, her mom and brother stopped by to demand money and utter awful things to her. She asked me to come help, but I had been ignoring her. When she sought to get assistance from one of her pals, everyone essentially said no. That's when it all clicked for her, and she eventually kicked her family out. But not before they said some truly terrible things to her, which I will not repeat. She repeatedly apologized to me and told me to come home. I told her openly that I had been harboring strong feelings of anger toward her for some years, and that while I loved her and knew that it was trauma rather than her being outright abusive, there were huge issues that needed to be addressed before we could move forward. First, she sells the house and relocates. We make nearly the same amount of money and plan to buy a property together. I am an adult man, and I will not live in a home where I have no equal agency. Second, her relatives will never enter it. They will never come over, and if they do, I will treat them in a hostile manner. Third, she sees a new therapist and we begin premarital counseling. Fourth, she never forced me to interact with her relatives again. Fifth, we will maintain little communication with her family for the time being, but make no mistake. We are moving toward complete no contact from her end. I told her that I loved her. We've been together for a long time and have wonderful memories, and I know she's been abused. But these conditions cannot be changed. If she has a problem with any of them, we will have to part ways. She informed me she's known for a while that her family is poisonous and unhealthy, and she wants to make changes, but some of them will take time to manifest. For the time being, I plan to stay in the hotel till I return to see my family. She is welcome to come over, but I have made it obvious that her home is not a place I want to be. We both have the day off tomorrow, so we'll spend it here and maybe go out. This is definitely not over yet. But I may not publish again until mid-August or so. Update 2. Despite my best intentions to not update until much later, with the hopes of improving my relationship with my fiancée and her establishing boundaries with her toxic family, we have now split up. Essentially what occurred was that after last weekend, when I left her to deal with her family on her own, she appeared to fully understand the issue and was open to adjustments, including limits and a possible transfer. We spent Monday and Tuesday hanging out at my hotel before I returned to my family for a few weeks. She was scheduled to come over the previous night, but her texts were pretty ambiguous. She arrived considerably later than usual, and I sensed something was wrong. She basically went off on me, calling me abusive, overbearing, extremely demanding and unsupportive. It took me 5 seconds to realize she was reciting a planned speech from her parents. To be honest, I was so irritated at this point that, despite taking a tremendous risk on her, I chose to be a jerk about it. I questioned if her relatives had told her to say this. She said they proposed it, although she came up with it herself. Sure. I requested her to explain in detail what I had done wrong. She stated I was parasitic on her. I reminded her that I was paying 50/50ths for her mortgage, electricity and groceries, and that I own and pay for my own car, as well as a job that pays the same as hers. Unlike her parasitic parents, who demand cash every week and loot the kitchen on weekends. I advised her to try again with something better. She appeared flustered and said I was attempting to isolate her. I smirked and informed her that I had always supported her many friendships, which she ended on her own since no one wanted to deal with her family or be used as a shield like me. At this point, I was nearly demanding to know why she was so determined to wreck her life for these individuals. She simply shouted that I don't understand her family and that she's just trying to reclaim their affection, and she was really ranting at that point. It's really incredible to see up close. I went to a few subreddits to get perspectives, and if you're familiar with them, you'll see how people who have been abused by their own family can be so completely broken that it wrecks their brain to the point where they believe they are the problem and deserve the abuse. That was exactly how she was. Completely shattered and unable to accept help. She didn't want to improve. She only wanted to get worse. The knowledge hit me hard, like a truck. I felt like a fool for attempting, even though it was what I was supposed to do in the first place. She was virtually insane by this point, and I was simply mentally weary and needed her to go before the cops arrived. She eventually went, but a few concerned neighbors checked on me. Some of her friends are aware, as they have messaged me to inquire about the situation. I told them the truth. I needed to be alone to think about what to do next. They have now revealed that she has delivered similar rants in response to their concern for her. One had even heard that she could lose her job. She is certainly taking a mental break from my understanding. She is now fully alone, plunging into a miserable, lonely existence. There's nothing I can do for her at this point, and as selfish as it may sound, I'm simply relieved it's over. Update 3. Things had mostly been wrapped up, but there remained a few loose ends. I absolutely failed to change my mailing address, which I should have done right away, so a few crucial things were delivered to her residence. I had to go get them, as well as a few other items I had left behind that I had decided I wanted to keep. She was being difficult and did not answer messages about them, so I had to go retrieve them myself. I had brought a common acquaintance just in case. Fortunately, she was cooperative in allowing me to retrieve my belongings, which was not a big deal. Everything else was another story. She said a lot of unpleasant things to me, including how she was already sleeping around, how pleased she was that I was gone, and how she was finally free from me. She said she'd be so much better off without me. All typical insults and dreadful things you'd expect from a bad breakup. You know what? It was clear that it was a scripted script from her family, and you could tell she was miserable. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. The house was a mess. She wasn't even yelling. She sounded drained and broken as she said it. She didn't even smile as she spoke. Her face was distorted with hatred and wrath. She wasn't the lady I knew anymore. That individual was gone. When I was about to leave, she was still going on. I got fed up and told her something like, "Congratulations, your friends are gone, your human shields are gone, your engagement is over, and your support is gone. Anyone who has ever treated you with dignity is no longer alive. It's only you and your family. I hope you're content while they bleed you dry." It most likely did not go precisely as described, but something similar. She simply stood there, stared at me indifferently, and walked away as I walked out the door. Tiffany, a common friend, inquired about my well-being as we were leaving. I reassured her that I was and explained that I was only preparing to return home next week. She also confirmed that she had heard that my ex had been fired for failing to show up for work for several days and effectively disappearing. They're going to try an intervention next week and have asked if I can participate, but I'm not postponing my trip because frankly, I just want a clean break. I know that if I continue involved, I will only see a steady decline into either a complete breakdown or suicide. I simply cannot do that. Despite this, I'm excited about the future. I realized I overlooked far too many red signs in the beginning. Despite all that has transpired, I am confident that I will do well. I expect this to be my final update. I'm still in town till Sunday afternoon, so something may happen while I'm here, but it won't be exciting. Update 4. I'm currently in my home state visiting family, reacquainting myself with the place. I've decided to stay here permanently and have begun the long process of looking for properties in the region. I've been doing well, going out with friends and family. A handful of mutual friends with my ex-fiancée have told me what's been going on, and things appear to be improving. The intervention was supposed to take place on Sunday, but Saturday night after her family paid her another visit, she called pals in a fit of mania. It appears that she has now realized how horribly she screwed up. It was a full-blown panic episode and meltdown that landed her in the emergency room. Needless to say, she finally admits how miserable she is and how horribly she has messed up her life. Apparently, she attempted to phone me, but I had blocked her. She still has a job, and the information about her losing it was incorrect, but she is hanging by a thread there. Her supervisor has effectively told her to take a few weeks off work to clear her mind. Her friend circle is quite close. My ex was a really helpful and supportive friend, so it's understandable that her friends are going to such lengths to aid her. However, there is an implicit agreement that if she returns to her old ways, they will all allow her to sink on her own. She's doing as well as can be expected, however her family has continued to bother her with phone calls and messages. They attempted to visit her residence but were strongly redirected by friends and neighbors. I hope she understands the type of support system she has. As trashy as family arguments generally are, her parents and brothers have taken it to Facebook, which, according to what I've heard, has worked to my ex's advantage. It has exposed their behavior to a larger audience and appears to have silenced them for a short time. Finally, she had one of our common friends deliver a note to me. Essentially, She was confessing that all of the horrific things she said to me were lies and that her family had pressured her to say them, which I had known all along. She apologized for how things ended and hoped we could reconnect someday. Unfortunately, I had to explain that we needed to stay apart for good and that she should focus on her recuperation. I informed her that while I still care for her and wish her the best, this was our final goodbye. The message appears to have been sent and her friends are assisting her in processing it. She has a long way to go, but I hope she finds peace as I do. Comments. OOP regarding the ex's parents' opinions. OOP, they simply tried to play the "your daughter is ungrateful and cruel" card with close friends and family, only for a slew of people to call them out on their actions. Take this with a grain of salt, as it is unsubstantiated, but according to one source, in retribution, people began phoning one of the brothers' workplaces and leaving critical reviews on their Facebook page, airing all of the dirty laundry. It's not going well for him, although this is unconfirmed. Top comment. Her parents and brothers have escalated their family feud on Facebook. There were no falsehoods discovered. I applaud OOP for avoiding that disaster as much as possible. It's much better for this woman if she understands that her decisions have real repercussions, and if she doesn't want such consequences in the future, she needs to perform serious self-improvement. Update 5. I've been doing pretty well since I returned home. All of my belongings arrived safely, and I am now living with my family while I look for a new home. I've set up my employment here and have been back at work for the past week. I occasionally come here to comment and post, but that is all. Unfortunately, despite the best intentions of my ex's friends, the scenario has now ended in the worst possible way, and the friend group has been fractured as a consequence. My ex took her own life. Almost everything I'm about to say I learned last night. Since I left, her friends had been assisting her in getting back on her feet, encouraging her to seek better therapy, establishing boundaries with her family, and getting her out of the house. They definitely went above and above. Tiffany, the friend who was there to help me the last time I spoke face-to-face with my ex, became suspicious when she noticed my ex being touchy-feely with her boyfriend Daniel, while they were hanging out at her place. I don't sure exactly when things progressed, but Tiffany ultimately got hold of her boyfriend's phone when he was sleeping and discovered highly sexual messages between him and my ex. These texts were more than 5 months old, which surprised me greatly. Tiffany clearly lost it and informed everyone. Nobody could have predicted the drama that unfolded. Daniel, Tiffany's now ex, threw another member of the friend group, Joseph, under the bus, alleging he had covered for him. Joseph's girlfriend in turn dumped him and kicked him out of her home. A friend group of about 9 people, including my ex, nearly imploded. Tiffany and Joseph's ex are the only ones that continue to communicate. Mind you, when I was being told all of this, I was informed that, despite the fact that I had been gone for almost a month, everything had occurred within the first week of my absence. My ex immediately lost her entire support system and was accused of everything. This simply exacerbated her already deteriorating mental health. Of course, everyone was curious as to why she had done such things to one of her closest friends. She simply stated that they had become close and that he was a terrific support system for her. Of course, she'd told her family about him, and they approved of him over me. She asked him over the night I left for the motel. Apparently, her ultimate goal was to leave me for him. He wouldn't leave Tiffany for her, and he despised hearing about her family, so he certainly wouldn't pursue anything other than a hidden affair. I expected to be much furious than I was, but I had already started to move on. I had just had a comprehensive health exam at my new doctor's office and received a clean bill of health, with no STDs, so I didn't have to worry about that. Getting outraged would be counterproductive at this stage. I was told that I was informed late because no one knew how to break the news to me, which is understandable. So yep, my ex was absolutely shunned, even by Tiffany's ex, who simply disappeared. She was blocked and left to cope with her troubles on her own. Tiffany simply knew that she had lost her work for good and spent all of her leisure time with her family. They had finally triumphed, in a sense. It was discovered 2 nights earlier that she had committed suicide at home. Her relatives discovered her. When the medical team arrived, one of the old friends from the neighborhood showed up. Her family was there and they didn't seem to care. Tiffany contacted me last night just to let me know. There were other messages, and she asked me, as gently as possible, if I wanted mine for closure. I honestly don't know what to do about it. I'm experiencing a lot of mental whiplash right now. I never knew this woman. I've had to acknowledge over the last month, since returning home, that she was abusive in our relationship because of everything she put me through with her family. Now it appears that it was a ploy to drive me away so she could be with another man who her family appeared to like. This confuses me even more, because what did he have that I didn't? Did they simply love watching her life fall apart? Was there anything real about her? Was there anything real about the folks with whom I spent years of my life? Returning home was the best decision I've ever made, and I now have complete evidence of that. I can begin therapy to work through this issue, spend time with a group of individuals who are truly trustworthy in person rather than online, and have relatives nearby for support. But yes, this will be with me for a long time. Comments? Comment. Do not read the letter. It will do you no good. Give it to a therapist to read, have them reseal it in another envelope and let them decide whether or not you should read it based on your mental health. Or if it should be unread and burned. OOP, I'm not interested in the letter or anything related to them. It's time to go on with my life. Fooled my cheating wife into thinking I was unfaithful, then ghosted her on Christmas Day after meticulously planning a year-long revenge. Here's the backstory. My future ex-wife is my high school sweetheart. We started dating in 1992, when we were both 17. We're both 45 and have been together since. She is the only woman I've ever been with in my life. We married 5 years later, at the age of 22, right out of college. A year later, we welcomed our first 2 children, both boys who are now 22 and 17. I gave her 23 years, built her a home, and worked tirelessly to provide her the life she desired. Sure, we had our issues, but what marriage doesn't? Even in the darkest of situations, we found a way to persevere and emerge stronger, making the revelation of her affair all the more startling. Flashback to March 2020. I had a feeling something wasn't right. We had been in a funk for approximately 2 months before. I was still unable to move while recovering from reconstructive knee surgery after tearing my ACL in the fall of 2019. At the time, my knee had only around 55% range of motion, which hindered my ability to conduct a variety of household tasks. I was out on workers' compensation because I was injured on the job, so I couldn't do my usual housework. My sons did their best, but duties that only I could do had to be postponed, or my wife had to take them on, which she detested. Things also came to a standstill in the bedroom. It had already slowed down before my crash, but in my current state, it came to a complete stop. During these months, Sue, we'll call her that, spent more time after work mingling with co-workers. From November 2019 until March 2020, it was a reoccurring event for her. Naturally, I rejected it. I'd had no reason to be concerned or wary of her over the previous 23 years. She had her friends, I had mine, and we had mutual pals. I could hang out with my friends all the time without issue. Everything was above board. However, in January of that year, I started to notice something unusual. Sue was growing increasingly distant. Sure, we were in a funk, but she had never denied me affection until that time. The usual hugs and kisses came to a stop. Her phone, which had previously been nearly tethered to her hand, was now secure. She was becoming more private, despite the fact that she was frequently sharing DIY ideas, recipes and memes with me. Her interactions with me became more snippy, as if she couldn't be bothered. So we're now in March. COVID has arrived, and New York City is under lockdown. Our chosen vocations are essential, thus neither of us had to work from home. I had just been cleared to return to work after being out for 5 months and I was eager to go back to it. 5 months of sitting on my ass, rehabbing my knee and being unable to do physical things drove me insane. For context, I adore physical activities. I'm an active martial artist who goes to the gym 4 days a week, in addition to all of the housework I handle. Within a week or 2 of the lockout, my soon-to-be ex-wife informed me that she would need to resume working extra hours. I didn't think much of it because of her profession. I expected it to be every other day, but it was every day, for more than an hour or 2. She'd get home 3 or more hours later, shower, spend some time with me and our 17-year-old son, our 22-year-old was staying with his girlfriend across town, and then go straight to bed. As my knee recovered more movement, we continued our intimacy, but as one might anticipate, she was not intellectually or emotionally present as I quickly noticed. By early April the picture was getting clearer for me. All of the signs led to her having an affair. That was the moment I realized I needed answers. I scoured the internet for indicators of adultery in a partner and she checked almost every box. My search query grew to how do I find proof? I started with her social media, looking over her Facebook posts from several months ago. It was the usual, images of us and our sons, some with her friends, and some from her nights out with coworkers. These images included a mix of her closest co-workers and a few folks I had never met. But one thing stood out. Practically every picture featured the same guy. Every photograph he appeared in showed him standing uncomfortably close to her, his arm on her shoulder or his hand on her lower back. Far too close for a guy I'd never met. Needless to say, that left a nasty taste in my mouth, but it was far from the worst of it. The worst part was realizing he was her Facebook friend and Instagram following. So naturally, I searched for his Facebook account, only to discover that I had been barred. Why the hell was I unable to view this guy's Facebook profile when he was friends with her? At this point, I was in full Batman detective mode. I wasn't even attempting to deny it. I knew she was cheating on me with this man. My goal became to learn how long it had been going on. That was exactly what I did in April and May. Until then, I had no idea how much data could be pulled from phone records, text messages and email archives. We have a family cell phone contract, so I had access to a significant amount of data. My soon-to-be ex-wife's data history revealed that the two most common phone numbers she used between October 2019 and April 2020 were mine and one I had never seen before. Can you guess whose number it was? A quick Google search revealed that the individual in the photographs was the identical one who had blocked me on Facebook. We'll just name him P since that's who he is. The picture is clearer at this point, but many of their discussions and texts were disjointed, so she deleted a big number of them. I knew she was cheating on me with this person. But the statistics didn't prove it. I needed more evidence. At this point, I told my best friend Oz what I had discovered. He asked if I had questioned her with facts. I said no because I felt it wasn't enough. That's when he told me of an app I might use to track her communications in real time. I won't mention the name here because of the rules, but I installed it, linked it to our data plan, and waited. Within days, I saw it. A text exchange between the two of them, discussing how much fun they had the night before and making plans to do it again that weekend. Boom. Gut punch. To say I was devastated is an understatement. I suppose that was my D-Day. For the next 2 days, I was completely broken. I purposefully distanced myself from her. During the 2 days after D-Day, she noticed something was wrong. She tried to console me and ask what was wrong, but I ignored her and walked away. I couldn't even look at her. This woman to whom I had given 23 years of my life, everything I could as a husband, and she had left our marriage for a man barely 5 years older than our eldest child. By the 3rd day, I was no longer depressed, but enraged. I emailed Oz to inform him that my suspicions were confirmed. He asked if I confronted her and I responded no. I sought retaliation. I didn't just want to divorce her, I wanted to destroy her. I planned to undermine her life and ruin her. It would take some time, but I had a plan. In my studies and research on infidelity, I came across a statement that struck a chord with me. The enemy of infidelity is unpredictability. That was going to be the core of my strategy. I meant to make her life hell on wheels while quietly planning my escape. So it's early June and I still have the app installed. Almost every night I gather as much data as possible. I see their back and forth texts. They talk like they're in a full-fledged relationship, sexting, flirty romantic things, nudes, the works. At that point, I stopped looking at anything and focused solely on gathering information and cataloging everything on my personal server. Meanwhile, I began engaging in odd behaviors. I began leaving at irregular hours and arriving home much later than she did. I spent more time on my phone than usual while with her, and when she asked what I was doing, I just replied, "Just stuff," and put it away. I also changed the login credentials for everything so she couldn't get into any of my stuff. Throughout our marriage, we had never kept anything from one another. However, about the time I believe her romance started, she changed her Facebook and phone passwords, blaming recent security breaches. Yeah, that's an excellent reason to conceal an affair from your husband. I notified Oz about my plans, as well as my older sister and 2 other close friends. These are the people I trust with my life, and I have sworn them to secrecy. To clarify, Oz and I have been friends since we were children. We've known Joey and Na, our other 2 friends, since high school. Keep Na in mind, she will have a role later on. In July, my soon-to-be ex-wife was absolutely paranoid. She was texting and calling me more frequently, asking whether I'd be home when she got back, when I was coming home, what I was doing and so on. I could see the seed I planted in her mind a month ago starting to sprout, notably in her interactions with P. She was confiding in him, expressing her worries and perplexity, and warning him that I was becoming cold and distant. This woman has a lot of nerve. During these interactions with P, she even suggested that they stop meeting at our house since she wasn't sure if I'd just show up, confirming of course that she had brought this guy into my home. Thanks, Sue. P asked her in that conversation if she was afraid I was cheating on her, which irritated her. I can't tell you how much pleasure and laughter I had from reading that exchange, my cheating wife arguing with her affair partner about whether she was angry at her husband for perhaps cheating on her. Oh, how ironic. Please bear in mind that I was not hooking up with anyone. When I left the house, I was usually at Oz's or Joey's, drinking, watching fights and socializing with my brothers. Or I was at my big sister's house, hanging out with her and my brother-in-law, who is like an older brother to me. My sister is 52, and her husband is 58. I had told them about my soon-to-be ex-wife's infidelity, but not about my plan. I couldn't risk it because my brother-in-law is a bit of a blabbermouth. Moving forward to October, things started to heat up. Sue was completely aware that I was intentionally drifting away from her after 3 months of my false romance. I hadn't touched her once between the day I carried out my plan and the day she confronted me. October 20th, 2020. No embraces, kisses, or attempts to initiate intimacy, none. Not that she needed it. She still got it from P, whether at his place or in a hotel. That afternoon she called me at work, which was not unusual before anything began, but it hadn't happened in a while. She implored me to come home immediately from work, saying she had something essential to tell me. I won't lie, I partly expected her to admit her infidelity. However, she didn't. Instead, I returned home and asked her whether I was furious with her. The nerve. She commented that I'd spent much too much time away from home, hadn't shown her any affection, and that our intimacy had faded. She expressed fear that I was driving her away because of my animosity for how she treated me when I was rehabbing my knee. Then came the punchline. She gasped and asked whether I was cheating on her. Folks, I fell to the floor laughing hysterically. And by hysterically, I mean like the Joker laughing so hard. On the surface, it appeared to her that I was laughing at the prospect of being unfaithful, but I was actually laughing at the irony of the circumstances. I was on the floor for over 2 minutes, weeping and banging my fists in hysterics before I could calm myself and react. I sat up, looked her in the eyes for the first time in months, shook my head and did not speak. I got up, brushed myself off, kissed the top of her head and started settling in for the night. Later that night, as I was in my office, I wanted to see what she was messaging P about what had just happened. I opened the app, and sure enough, they were texting in real time. She told P, "I know he's cheating on me. I questioned him tonight and he simply laughed in my face. He collapsed on the floor and laughed for almost 5 minutes. It did not take 5 minutes. He no longer cares about my feelings. I'm not sure how or why, but he's left. I realize I've lost him. This is karma, and I know it." The smile I had on my face while reading must have looked like the Cheshire Cat. Her heart was breaking. P tried to console her, telling her that if I cared enough about her, she wouldn't have had to turn to him for what I wasn't giving her. Her statements, however, suggested that she was now having doubts. She had the audacity to quit our marriage because I was unable to perform my duties as a husband due to a real injury, and she pursued the affair for approximately a year. But was the thought of losing me to another woman enough to make her reconsider? What a weakling. Throughout this, I was also implementing the second component of my strategy, getting my finances in order. In September, I met with a family attorney to start the divorce process. With the material I had gathered up to that point, I was convinced I could nail her to the wall in a divorce case, especially because New York is an at-fault state. My lawyer advised me to prepare all of my accounts in anticipation of the approaching asset division. I went a step further, secretly removing all of my funds from our joint account and deposited them into my own. As part of the second phase, I began searching for an apartment. Now it's November, and my behavior hasn't changed. In fact, I have turned it up. This is when my friend Na enters the picture. Na and Sue were never close. I met Na during my freshman year of high school, 2 years before meeting Sue. Sue saw Na as a threat, even though she was my closest female friend. Sue always gave Na an implied "I don't trust her" vibe. Sue never addressed it directly, but it was obvious to everyone paying attention. Na, on the other hand, felt no affection for Sue. Na pointed out early in my relationship with Sue that she was imposing herself on our social circle, but I did not do the same for Sue's friends. That infuriated Na since she knew why Sue was doing it. Sue still doesn't have any male friends in her circle, save for P, but Na is the only female in mine. Na had been kept overseas because of the epidemic before returning to New York City on November 3rd. Oz, Joey and I decided to celebrate her return by hosting a modest dinner and drinks party at Joey's house. There were just 5 of us: Oz, Joey, Joey's wife, Na's sister, Na, and me. We followed the CDC's guidelines because we take COVID seriously. Na, being the mastermind that she is, concocted a sinister scheme to enrage Sue. She suggested we take some photos of Sue and P, similar to those I found months ago, and post them on Facebook. This is precisely what we did. Sue learned about it on the 5th, when a few friends viewed my updates and saw how uncomfortably close Na and I appeared in the images. Sue was perplexed by this, especially because she still suspected I was cheating. I'm almost convinced she wanted to accuse Na, but she knew Na had been in Europe for the majority of the year. Still, it didn't stop her from attempting to dress me down that night since, as she described it, I was handsy in the pictures. I recognized this as a good opportunity to deliver the opening jab for my knockout punch. I inquired, "So how about the images of you and P from last year? He was really handsy in them, but did you notice how upset I was about it?" Deer in headlights. It was the first time I'd mentioned the guy's name in all of this. The hamster wheel in her head began to whirl in real time as she struggled to understand those photographs. She had no idea I had seen them up until that time. That's how rarely I use Facebook. When I do, it's like an event for others, which is why the images with Nina drew so much attention in our networks. She explained them away. "He's like that with everyone. He's just a very friendly guy. I get how it appears, but there is nothing there. I am sorry if the photographs offended you. I'll erase them." No, the photographs were not the cause of my problems. The thought of you banging this guy for a year while lying to me about working extra hours and hanging out with friends has destroyed me. However, as Lieutenant Worf from Star Trek TNG memorably stated, "Vengeance is a dish best served cold." Sue became overly attached and attentive to me following that night, which was frustrating. She'd want to begin warmth and closeness, but I'd stop her at every opportunity. I was constantly recording whatever she said to P. By this point I had gone entirely numb. Any motivation I had to save my marriage was gone. I checked out on the day I executed the first phase of my strategy. She was telling him that I had gotten worse, that she didn't know what to do and that she believed I detested her. I did. Then she dropped the bombshell. She announced she could no longer see P. Her guilt was intense, and she felt like punishment was strangling her. She couldn't risk losing me. She claimed to love P deeply, but she was still in love with me and sought to save her marriage before losing me. "No, my sweetheart. You were about 8 months too late for that." P lost it, saying beautiful things like, "He doesn't love you the way I love you. You are making a mistake. You can't just dismiss me like that." That text chain was their last until around 3 weeks ago. Sue was in uncertainty for the rest of November and December, trying to figure out where my headspace was while also unsure whether I was being unfaithful. Meanwhile, P was constantly blowing up her phone. But she did not respond. I noticed her checking her phone regularly, but she quickly set it aside. Meanwhile, phase 2 of the plan was officially finished. The divorce papers were completed. I'd found a studio apartment in Co-op City, a neighborhood recognizable to New Yorkers, and signed a 2-year contract. All of my money was in my own account. I was ready to throw my haymaker. Now it is Thanksgiving. My oldest son and his girlfriend were throwing a modest reunion for our immediate families, which included my oldest, his girlfriend, her parents, she is an only child, myself, Sue, and our youngest. We had a great night. My oldest girlfriend is training to be a chef, and she did all of the cooking herself. Let me tell you, the chick can cook. To give the impression that nothing was wrong between Sue and me, I expressed affection for her several times that evening, including kisses on the cheek, charming small hugs, and wrapping my arms over her shoulders from behind. She was aware of and loved the gestures. Keep in mind that this was the first time I had touched her since kissing the top of her head the night she confronted me in October, roughly 2 months prior. I won't lie, I was horrified by it, but I had no choice. I could not jeopardize the plan. My distancing from her in front of our sons, my oldest's girlfriend and her parents would raise alarms. My youngest elected to spend the night with his elder brother, so Sue and I returned home. On the drive home, she thanked me for being so nice to her and said, "I don't know what you're going through, baby, but I'm here for you." I had to stop myself from busting out laughing again and answered, "I know, I just need time." For the first time since spring, we had sex that evening. I thought, what the hell? With what I'm going to do, I might as well get some work done before eliminating her from my life. I won't get into specifics, but it wasn't love. When I finished, she was a ball of flesh laying there, trying to figure out which way the truck that had run her over had gone. There will be no cuddling or anything afterwards. To her amazement, I just got up, washed and fell asleep in my office. However, I wore a condom for the first time in nearly 2 decades. She was perplexed, but she didn't ask questions. I had no intention of going raw on her, knowing she had done so with P for months. I awakened the next day and launched my handy surveillance program. For the first time in weeks, she responded to P. The dude went full Neela. He expressed his feelings for her, saying she was wasting her time trying to rekindle a dying flame in me, and that she had been in prison with me for 23 years and deserved to feel the love and affection of a man who adored her. Mind you, this guy is 27 years old, only 5 years older than our oldest son, and he was that asterisk hurled at a 45-year-old married mother of 2. What a fantastic high-quality guy she chose to destroy our marriage and the home we had built for ourselves. Isn't he a beautiful boy with a compassionate side? She responded by saying essentially the same thing she had when they last spoke. She loved him and enjoyed their time together, but she couldn't lose me. She stated that I was still the love of her life, but there would always be a place in her heart for him, and they could be friends if he so wished. But their physical relationship had ended. He persuaded her to meet him one last time that week, and she consented. One more for the road, right? Who am I to say anything? That's just what I did to her the night before. Of course, I saved all of this in the archive I had built. On December 4th, the third and final phase of Operation Shinobi Ghost started. The divorce paperwork was completed, my new place of residence was established, and now I needed to gradually begin moving my possessions out of the house. But first, I needed to tell my boys. That Friday night, I invited my oldest to join me at my office. I laid everything out on the table, except for the specifics. Their mother had been cheating on me for about a year, and I was preparing to file for divorce. My 17-year-old was particularly touched by this since he had recently experienced his first taste of infidelity. His first girlfriend had cheated on him just 4 months previously. The notion of his own mother being capable of doing such a thing tore his heart apart for the second time. My oldest handled it much better and suggested that he take his brother in to live with him until everything was settled, which I agreed to. We packed some of his possessions and he inquired, "Are you going to be okay?" I replied, "Yes, youngster, I am going to be okay, as are you. We will be all right, I promise." Then they were gone. The most difficult part was now accomplished and it was time to arm the nuclear weapons. Over the next 2 weeks, Oz would help me remove some of my most sensitive belongings out of the house on a regular basis. I gave him a list of everything he needed to get while Sue and I were at work and left him with a spare key. Sue would not have realized anything was missing until someone told her. I also obtained a new phone and phone number, which I shared with everyone who needed to know: Oz, Joey, my boys, my big sister, and my mother. Meanwhile, I continued the deception with Sue and she had no idea. I gave her bits and pieces of affection to keep her off the trail while she was still in contact with P, not as much as before, but there was still an emotional connection. The fog was faint, but still there. All the while, I was gathering, and I mean everything. Every bit of data I'd saved since the beginning of the plan, call logs, texts, images, emails, everything, and printing it. I must have spent over $1,500 on staples supplies like printer ink, paper and binders. I organized everything chronologically from the beginning of the affair to the end 2 weeks ago in December. 14 binders. I then placed each one in a box, gift-wrapped it, and addressed it to a variety of people, including my mother. My father died 7 years ago, her parents, her 2 sisters, her brother, her HR department. Did I mention P works for the same company, and there is an express rule against intercompany relationships because of the nature of what she does. Several of her friends, P and her parents. I took all of those parcels to the post office and got them shipped out on December 16th. Delivery is scheduled between December 22nd and December 24th. Perfect. So we are now on Christmas Eve. Sue returns home at the usual time, unsure if she has seen P. On the 18th, I stopped tracking her on the app, believing I'd gotten enough use out of it. As usual, she showers, spends time with me, and then I blow her out on the living room couch. Then she retires for the night. The final stage had arrived. The nuclear weapon I had been constructing since June was about to be fired. I arose in the middle of the night and wrapped one of the 3 remaining binders with the divorce papers glued to the inner cover, then placed it on my side of the bed with a Merry Christmas greeting. Next to it, I left my old phone and my lawyer's business card. I packed up the rest of my most important items, enough to fill 2 backpacks, and left the house I'd lived in for 23 years for the final time. That was a week ago, buddies. Sue believes that I have vanished, been shadowed, or ghosted. She is blocked on Facebook, but she hasn't blocked me, so I'm keeping track of the effects. It's simply great. My packages have arrived at their destinations, and Sue has been crucified. Her younger sister dressed her completely down. Both of her parents have condemned her. My mother totally destroyed her, like holy crap. I know my mother is harsh, but what she called Sue was ridiculous. Sue has been feverishly trying to find out whether anyone knows where I am, but those who do are not saying anything. She's desperately attempting to contact me all over her Facebook feed, possibly because she knows I'm looking. But I won't say anything to her without my lawyer present. That'll be the next time I share oxygen with her. She can't use the narrative to make me appear bad because I've exposed her to everyone she cares about. According to a mutual acquaintance who works for the same company, she and P will be placed on administrative leave starting tomorrow. So, excellent news, she will most certainly be unemployed by 2021. Regarding the final 2 binders, one has been delivered to my lawyer as the final piece of evidence for my impending divorce. The last one I stored in my storage unit, to be burnt in Joey's fire pit after the divorce is finalized. Do I feel sad about it? Not in the least. For 23 years, I treated her well. I gave her the home she wanted, the family she sought, the life I thought we both deserved, and unconditional love. Never did I falter. Never did I stray. Never did I consider breaking my vows. When an issue developed that I suspected was interfering with our marriage, I addressed her and explained the situation, and we worked together to remedy it as best we could. She chose to seek solace in another man's bed rather than come to me and communicate her discontent with her current intimate situation. She decided to go out with a young punk who gave her tingles. So no, I'm not sorry for whatever I did to or for her. I do not care if she ends up in hell. The most I could lose is my home, a car, and possibly a few $100s each month in alimony. However, because the divorce is filed under the adultery statute in New York State, which is an at-fault state, this may be waived based on the overwhelming evidence I've shown. She's dead to me, and I'll never look back. Quick edit. Under certain circumstances, NYS is not fully to blame. Yet a divorce can be filed at fault, as my lawyer has advised me. I'll meet with the soon-to-be ex-wife and her lawyer tomorrow. I suppose I will just post an update here. Update. I deceived my unfaithful soon-to-be ex-wife into thinking I was cheating, then disappeared and served her on Christmas Day. Christmas Day was the first full day I spent in my new apartment. It's still a work in progress because I want to buy more stuff, but I consider it my home because I'll be here for at least 2 years. My boys and the eldest girlfriend came over and spent most of the day with me. The girlfriend brought over homemade snacks and made a great lunch. I got to sit down and talk to my sons in a way I hadn't in a long time, which was nice. My big sister also stopped over with additional snacks and hung out with us. It was the first time she had seen her nephews in nearly a year. Having all of them there was extremely beneficial to me because I feel I would have drunk myself to death if I had been alone. Everyone left about 8 p.m., and I decided to go hang out with Joey and his wife Claudia. I hung out with them for a few hours, had a few beers, and then headed home. The next important advancement happened last week, on December 29, 2020. Nina texted me about midday, asking whether I was busy that night. I of course was not, so we agreed to meet after I ended work. She showed up and we went to a diner near where I worked. We're doing indoor eating at 25% capacity in NYC thanks to the Rona, but there's rarely a wait because many of us don't eat out very much these days. Regardless, once we were seated and had ordered our dinner, Nina essentially laid all of her cards on the table. And I knew what was coming. She basically admitted that she had liked me since we were teenagers but never had the opportunity to tell me because Sue swooped in and took me before she could. For context, I've known Nina for 2 years longer than Sue. As previously said, she is the 4th point on my social square, with myself, Oz and Joey. We were the social misfits in high school, raver youngsters who didn't fit into any of the other cliques. Nina struggled with her weight and developed diabetes. She was the heavy-set goth lady who was really cool, but no man ever looked twice at her. However, we have always had chemistry. Nina now works as a personal trainer and yoga instructor. She was the ugly duckling that grew into a stunning swan, if I may say so. Long story short, we decided to start dating after my divorce was finalized, And yes, I slept with her that night. We went back to my new house and had a terrific time. Am I ashamed of having slept with her? Hell no. Nina has been a more valuable friend to me than Sue ever was. That's not to say Sue wasn't my best friend, but Nina has always been there for me over the nearly 25 years I've known her, even standing back from her own feelings to allow me to pursue and eventually create a relationship with Sue. That moved me on a level I did not expect. That amount of selflessness for another person is the essence of true love. I know it sounds like I'm just convincing myself that sleeping with her was the right decision, but it was. And I aim to devote my complete attention to discovering what lies ahead for Nina and me. On to yesterday. Yesterday, I met with my wife and her lawyer to talk about our divorce. It's been 2 weeks since I ghosted my soon-to-be ex-wife. This past Monday, I received a phone call alerting me that Sue's attorney had set a conference with us to discuss the terms of divorce for January 6, 2021, which was yesterday. I met with my lawyer on Tuesday morning to discuss the terms I wanted. Sue filed for an uncontested divorce due to spousal neglect. My terms include a comprehensive distribution of assets, and I will sell her half of the house ownership. She may keep it. We keep our cars in good working order. I keep my Poconos cabin, and under the pretense of marital neglect, she receives no spousal support from me. My 17-year-old son, whom I will refer to as 17 inches from now on, is free to choose who he wants to live with following the divorce, which will most likely be me. So on Wednesday, I arrived at my lawyer's office dressed as Johnny Cash. My wife and her attorney were there, and she looked like a wreck, barely holding it together. I gave her a stern look. I won't burden you with legal language, but her lawyer proposed terms of reconciliation. I dismissed them almost as soon as she finished explaining the contents of the request. Long story short, we agreed on a formal separation that would result in an uncontested divorce. The only modification is that I will pay her $653 per month in temporary spousal support to cover the cost of utilities until she finds work again. Yes, she was fired for messing about with P. He was also let go. I agreed to pay for up to a year after the finalization. I make enough money that it won't hurt me financially if she takes her time looking for a new job, and she has enough savings to last a long time. She is alone after a full calendar year since the divorce was finalized. A little price to pay for getting rid of her crooked ass. Things will take around 3 months to finish, so provided nothing goes wrong, I should be rid of her by early April. After the meeting, my lawyer said his goodbyes and promised to call me to keep me informed on the status of the filing. Sue followed me down the street pleading, "Can we talk?" I figured I'd provide her with at least that. She remained calm during the discussion but burst into tears outside, apologizing and explaining that she never intended for it to get as far as it did. She explained that she never anticipated falling in love with P, but when she felt I was cheating, she realized how terrible it was to betray her own marriage in this manner. She begged me if I could ever find it in my heart to forgive her, and if we could try again in a few years. She can't imagine her life without me. I advised her to start envisioning it right away because it would be the last time I spoke or saw her. I informed her that 17 inches is virtually a man and capable of making his own decisions about his future. I claim I gave her half of my life and all of my unconditional love, but she, in her own words, fell in love with another man. I will never forgive her. My feelings for her were progressively drained during the months she confided in and confessed her love to P, rather than approaching me and telling me she was dissatisfied with how things were going between us. I told her that I used to love who she was, but now I loathe who she is, and that if I never see her again, it will be too soon. Here we are, on the sidewalk in Midtown Manhattan, with her causing a commotion and weeping her eyes out. A few individuals strolled by, throwing sideways glances, but I didn't mind. I didn't want to disgrace her in public. I'd already wrecked her socially and professionally, but I needed to demonstrate my last ounce of affection for her. I concluded by telling her that I had no regrets about being her husband for the previous 23 years. I despised the fact that, after 23 years, she believed that the simplest solution was the best one. And, here's the kicker, I owe this one to the nice kids of __ on Reddit, because it came to me only seconds before I said it. For 23 years, I thought you were mine, but it turns out it was just my turn. Then I inserted my Raycons, turned around and walked away. Later that night, her father contacted me to apologize. He compliments me on always being a nice father to his daughter, admits he is ashamed of her, and claims he raised her better than she did. I won't lie, I'll miss the old man. My father died years ago. Therefore he has always been my default father figure. But after that call, I doubt I'll be able to communicate with anyone in her family. That night, I went on Facebook and symbolically changed my relationship status to divorced. Yay! It's not finished yet, but in my opinion, it is. As previously said, when I post on Facebook it is deemed an event, thus several people contacted me via Messenger with questions. I explained everything, including the fact that I filed for divorce from Sue earlier that day. Of course, Nina called, surprised that I had pulled the trigger so swiftly. Obviously when we spoke, I was already in the process, but she had no idea how far along it was. When I asked her if she could come over, she bolted. We knocked boots again, but this time she stayed the night. We slept in my bed and spoke till early in the morning, and I haven't felt this relieved and connected in a long time. Nina understands me, and I can't get enough of being with her. She's been the only thing on my mind since she confided in me. Yeah, I know some people may think I'm up for moving on so quickly, but as far as I'm concerned, my marriage ended the day P let Sue touch his pecker, so I'm ready to go on. So wonderful, that is it, that's the end. My divorce is in the works, and I am starting a relationship with Nina. I know I mentioned in a statement to someone that I'd probably never marry again, but that was before Nina told me about her emotions for me, and I can't deny that I feel the same way now. We're planning to take things slowly and won't make any announcements until Sue's divorce is legal and formal. I don't care what happens to Sue. She could move P into our old house for all I care. I'll receive my house payment in 4 quarterly installments throughout 2021, and aside from the $653 I'll deposit directly into her savings account each month, I'll never see or communicate with her again. I am eternally grateful to everyone who has expressed encouragement, support and gratitude. The soon-to-be ex-wife of 23 years attempted suicide last night. The hits keep coming. I've been sitting here for hours and wasn't sure where to put it, but this sub seemed appropriate. So if you're looking for some backstory, check out my post history. I'm not sure how the connection to other subscribers works here, but my previous 2 entries are shown in my profile. Here's a quick version. I found out that my wife of 23 years, 45F, was having an affair with a 27-year-old coworker. We have 2 sons, aged 22 and 17. I created a plan to severely disrupt her life, with the goal of convincing her that I was having an affair of my own. I continued the ruse for more than 4.5 months while gathering evidence of her infidelity, obtaining divorce papers and planning my exit strategy. Slowly moving my personal belongings from our house to a new apartment, getting a new phone and number, separating my half of our shared income from our joint account, and so on. On December 16, 2020, I gathered all of the evidence of her affair that I had compiled, printed it from beginning to end, filed it in 14 binders, packed 11 in gift-wrapped boxes, and mailed it all to the most important people in her life, as well as her HR department, with an ETA of December 22, 2020. On Christmas Eve, while she slept, I took one of the remaining 3 binders and repeated the process, but this time I glued the divorce notice to the inside cover and placed it on my side of the bed. Mind you, she had her affair there several times, along with my old phone and my lawyer's business card. I shadow ghosted her. Her life fell apart during the next 4 days. Her family had effectively excommunicated her. Her friends, who were uninformed of the affair, shunned her, and my mother reprimanded her, calling her the most vile and derogatory insults you could imagine. Her lover and she were both put on administrative leave and eventually fired. We had our divorce hearing last week and agreed on a formal separation that will result in an uncontested divorce, subject to a few requirements for transitional income because she is still unemployed. I'll pay for the utilities, $653 per month, until she finds a job or until 1 year after the divorce is finalized, which is expected in 3 months. She keeps her home, car, and half of the marital assets. I keep half of the assets, which include my car, motorcycle, boat and vacation house, a cabin in the Poconos. Following the hearing, we had one final conversation in which she attempted to excuse her infidelity and pushed me to give her another chance once the divorce was finalized. Of course, I said no, told her some harsh words, and walked away forever. This brings us to last night. Only my closest friends, 2 boys, elder sister and mother have my new contact information, and I have completely blocked my soon-to-be ex-wife from all social media platforms. She has no way to reach me since I left her on Christmas Eve, but several of our mutual acquaintances do. Last night, I was sitting at my apartment when I received a voice call notification on Messenger from one of those friends. She was one of the only people who didn't forsake Sue after the affair was uncovered. She did not waste time responding to my message. She informed me that she had gone to check on Sue, my soon-to-be ex-wife, and discovered her passed out in the bedroom, foaming at the mouth with 2 empty pill bottles beside her. Sue was in the intensive care unit, in critical but stable condition, and the doctor anticipated she'd recover. Sue had pleaded with me to come, and her parents and 2 sisters were also hospitalized. My guess is that they were notified after the hospital attempted to tell me, but Sue was still using my old phone number as her emergency contact. I merely told her friend, no. Sue is no longer my problem. And that she had clearly decided to take the easy way out rather than face the sorrow and misery of ending her 23-year marriage. I then told her friend that if Sue's family was present, they could help her pick up the pieces, but as far as I'm concerned, there is no Sue and I anymore. I ended the call. I slept on it for a few hours, and my sons called me this morning to find out what occurred. I answered yes, and I told them both that if they wanted to be there to support their mother, I wouldn't judge them for it. She is their mother after all. But I made it clear that I no longer cared what she did with or to herself. They were both taken aback by this, but they acknowledged my position. However, now that the news of her suicide attempt has spread, many of those who abandoned her are coming forward and telling me that I need to be there for her. That regardless of what she did to me, I should assist her in her time of need. I also discovered that her affair partner tried to pay her a visit this morning but was denied permission because he is not a family member. I am being pressed to go see her, but I no longer care about her. I haven't for a long time. I emotionally checked out during the process of collecting my revenge for her betrayal, and I still don't care what happened. Actually, it makes me dislike her even more. She is the one who was unfaithful. She is the one who, after a nearly year-long affair with a man barely 5 years older than our oldest child, decided it was worth jeopardizing 23 years of marriage. And now that she has to face the consequences of her actions, she adopts the most selfish approach. Even though she is expected to survive, she has managed to evoke quick sympathy from people who condemned her weeks ago. Meanwhile, I'm portrayed as the angry ex-husband who refuses to sympathize with her, at least by the bulk of her family. Her father, on the other hand, called me and supported my decision to stay away. I feel as if I never truly knew this woman. After 23 years, it has finally happened. Yes, I get that the way I ended things with her may have left her in a horrible emotional condition, but a whole new bag of worms has opened. Either she had a catastrophic mental breakdown and tried suicide, or she engaged in an extremely risky and deliberate ploy to regain favor with individuals who had only weeks before scolded her for abandoning me. She cheated on me and is now the victim? Sorry if this comes out as a rant, but I'm just trying to wrap my head around this. I want to be clear. I'm not going to visit Sue. She waived her right to my concern for her well-being the day she permitted P, my personal nickname for her partner, to touch her. This may come across as cruel, but despite my cool, calm and collected exterior throughout the event, my emotions remain raw. But I do not care about this woman. I haven't in a very long time. I am aware that I will be despised by a number of people here, but I do not mind. Think of me any way you choose. If you were in my position, you would interpret her actions very differently. Some of you will search through my post history to see what I did to her. You're going to infer that her suicide attempt was my fault. That tricking her into thinking I was cheating on her when she was actually cheating on me, and then destroying her socially and professionally, was the catalyst for her breakdown. Maybe it was. Maybe I am a callous sociopath. However, as Arthur Fleck famously said, you get what you quite deserve. I devoted half of my life to this woman, doing all in my ability to be the finest husband possible. She admitted that I had no influence over her decision to leave our marriage. She did it for herself. Her selfishness knows no bounds, and I'm relieved to be free of her. If that makes me a bad person because I refuse to visit her and never intend to engage with her again, so be it. I stick to my beliefs. She decided to deceive me. She decided to prioritize her needs over our marriage. So now it's my turn to prioritize myself above all else. I don't mind if she perishes in the depths of hell. Allow people to help her self-improvement. My dedication to her well-being ended when we signed the separation agreement. I simply needed to get this off my chest. If you're going to judge me for how I feel, save it. As I have indicated, despite 23 years and 2 children, I never fully knew this woman. I have no sympathy for her, and never will. Sue's father informed me that she had been transferred from the ICU to the mental health ward. The doctors are still keeping track of her mental health. She is alert and intelligent again, but definitely sleepy. Her father told me she asked if I might come to see her, but he declined. She turned off after that. He gently remarked that he would only provide additional information if I questioned, as he was aware of my mental state. I've also scheduled counseling for my son, who is 17 years old. His first consultation is this coming Monday. Update. The aftermath of my soon-to-be ex-wife's suicide attempt. I'm writing this as a form of therapy, a practical way to convey my ideas. Despite everything I had said in previous blogs and comments, I went to see Sue. She's been out of the hospital for 4 days, and believe it or not, Nina convinced me to see her. Nina explained that the only way I'd be able to let go of my dislike for Sue was to see her one more time in her fragile state. So about 6 p.m., I called Sue for the first time since serving her. Her greeting was not the happy and effervescent one I had grown accustomed to during the previous 2 decades. Her voice seemed harsh and faint. When she heard my voice, she burst into tears. It took her nearly 3 minutes to gather her composure and speak again. Before she could say anything, I told her I'd be there by 8 p.m., and she agreed. My prior home is around an hour to an hour and a half away from Co-op City, where I currently live. I grabbed a bite to eat at the neighborhood pizza and left. I arrived at 7:47 p.m., and she was already at the door when I drove into the driveway. As I neared, I realized the toll her actions had taken on her. She appeared noticeably thinner, the unhealthy kind of emaciated. Overall, she resembled the walking dead. The first thing she tried to do was come in for a hug, but I stopped her. She understood I wasn't there to console her and quickly backed off. We went inside and sat in the living room. Sue almost immediately told me that she wanted to be transparent about everything. She told me she couldn't live with her guilt over what she'd done to me and the boys. She entered a downward spiral of shame and misery after we signed the separation agreement, culminating in her suicide attempt. Her friend, who contacted me from the hospital, saw her behavior and started coming over to check on her. She stated that the doctors told her that if she hadn't been discovered 1 hour earlier, she would have survived. She stated that she had failed me as a wife. That falling for P was a mistake and that she had not backed out when she knew she was in too deep. She also apologized for sharing so much personal information about our marriage and speaking ill of me to him. She confessed she never imagined herself capable of doing such a thing. But she was. She thought she was doing the right thing, but when she discovered I was cheating, it hit her like a ton of bricks. The sensation of betrayal was intense, and she needed to leave as quickly as possible. However, it was definitely too late. She then asked when I had stopped caring. I told her the night she confronted me with such vehemence about my cheating, despite the fact that she had been sleeping with P for months. I lost all respect for her that night, which fueled my drive to follow out my plan. She told me that when she got up on Christmas morning and saw the gift I had left, she was overjoyed, until she opened it. When she realized what it was and how much I knew, she went wild and hasn't entered our bedroom since. She desperately tried to find out if anyone knew where I was, but when she went to Facebook to ask, she was scolded by friends and family for her actions. She wasn't sure how everyone knew so quickly. That's when I informed her about the remaining binders. Her shocked look was priceless. It dawned on her that I had orchestrated everything she had gone through. Her friends turning on her, her family humiliating her, and yes, even her job loss. It was all my fault. She simply fell silent and turned off after that. When I went to use the bathroom, everything was in disarray. The mirror was broken, her skincare supplies were all over the place, and the tub appeared to have not been cleaned since they took her to the hospital. When I returned to the living room, she put her face in her hands, crying. And truthfully, I felt nothing. There is no more anger, rage or sympathy. They say that apathy is the polar opposite of love, and as I looked at her, I felt exactly that. She looked up at me and murmured, "I messed up everything. I harmed us, and I don't know what to do. I can't do it by myself." I told her she had her family, the person who discovered her, and our sons, but not me. She would never do this again. I told her I came to give her closure after the pain she had put herself through, but as I walked out that door, I never looked back. P showed up shortly after. She informed me that he contacted her 2 days earlier. They spoke for a few hours, and she advised him to move on with his life, meet a younger woman and forget about her. Sue spent the remainder of the conversation apologizing for betraying me and asking, "Is this really the end?" Without hesitation, I looked her in the eyes and said, "Yes." It had ended long before I served the divorce papers on Christmas. I assumed it was my indication to leave. There were no further words exchanged since what else could be said. I left her on the couch, closed the door behind me, got in my car and drove home. It's 2:56 a.m. when I write this. I needed to convey it while it was still fresh in my mind. This concludes the Sue saga. My 17-year-old son and I have both been booked for counseling in the coming weeks. Nina and I are still going strong, sticking to our policy of keeping things quiet until my divorce is official. I'm remaining active and motivated, looking forward to a future with a woman I know will cherish and honor me, as she has for decades. It's time for me to focus on the life ahead of me. So, this is probably my last post for a while. Perhaps I'll publish an update after the divorce is official. Thank you to everyone who has supported me and wished me success. To everyone who cheered my retribution plan, I honestly wish it hadn't happened. But if I had to do it again, I wouldn't change anything, except maybe doing more to P than just firing him. And to the one person who attacked me, claiming I deserved it since I raped my wife, you are insane and, yeah, it's time to get my green ass out of here. Update. Where are things and where are they going? It's been just over 2 months since I served my wife's divorce papers, and a month since my previous update, which I said would most likely be my last. But a lot has transpired since that post, and after returning to this account and seeing hundreds of messages and responses, I decided to share what's going on. Before I continue, I'd like to convey my heartfelt appreciation for all of your compassion and support throughout my journey. I am grateful for all of the affection I've received on Reddit and from my family. First, I'd like to address a matter about which many people have expressed concern. My youngest son, who is 17 years old. He began individual counseling only a few days after my last post. I accompanied him to his first 2 sessions, and he has been going on his own ever since. He attends twice a week and it's really helped him. He is doing okay overall, but his trust in relationships has been completely shattered. The long-term consequences of his own adultery, combined with dealing with his mother's cheating and attempted suicide, have left a deep mark that I feel will take decades to heal. I also realized that his experience was worse than he had previously claimed. He discovered his ex-girlfriend making out with someone he thought was a friend, but who had only approached him to get to her. He never told me about this aspect of his breakup. My heart aches for my son, who has had to go through this at such a crucial point in his growth. You do everything you can to protect your children, but life ultimately says, no. He's decided to stay with IC for the long term, and I've told him that if he ever needs to talk to me about anything, nothing is off limits. Next up is my own IC. If you've read most of my articles, you'll see that I have an anger issue, which is odd given that I've always been a reserved and controlled man. But this entire event has certainly awakened a sleeping dragon in me, and it is a true fire breather. I have talked about everything with my therapist, and I mean everything. When I told him what I did to my ex, he was both amazed and appalled. Not what I had expected. Apparently, when prodded, I exhibit psychopathic tendencies, which is not surprising given what I have done. My sessions are more structured than dramatic, as I process all that is going on in my mind concerning my marriage's dissolution and attempt to achieve balance. Now, for the elephant in the room, Nina. I'm not sure where I would be without this woman. I never anticipated having such a loving, understanding and nurturing woman by my side to support me through this. We are still going strong, and despite our best efforts to keep our relationship quiet, it is very open within our circle. She just understands me, and has since we were teenagers. Because she understands the misery of having the person you've spent your entire life with cheat on you, she does everything she can to help me cope with my emotions. We alternated between staying in her place and mine. Her 5-year-old opposed the concept of living together. My flat is too small for 3 people and my lease is until 2022. So, for the time being, we'll continue to split time. Nina comes to my house when her kid is with her father and I come to hers when she has her daughter. Speaking of her daughter, I admire her and she has taken a liking to me. I wish I could find the words to describe how important Nina has been to me throughout everything. If you haven't read my previous entries, Nina has secretly loved me since we were sophomores in high school, but she was an ugly duckling who believed she had no chance with me. She deliberately sat by and watched me pursue, date and marry my soon-to-be ex-wife Sue, knowing how she felt. She kept this a secret for nearly 25 years, until a week after my divorce hearing, when we met for dinner and she revealed everything. I feel privileged to have her in my life. We are constantly discussing what the future holds for us. We are not getting married since we have both been burned by marriage, but we have discussed having a civil partnership. We'll probably wait a while before heading down that path, but it's evident that we're destined to be together. Finally, there is Sue, the soon-to-be ex-wife. There isn't much to tell. I haven't spoken to her since her attempted suicide. I have no idea what she is doing and don't want to know. I consider her dead. That is pretty much all. Life goes on. It's March 2nd as I type this, so only 1 month till the divorce is final. By this time next month, I'll be a free man, and I'm counting down the days until I can begin the next chapter in my life. To clarify, I made a mistake when I mentioned being clinically diagnosed as a psychopath. My therapist indicated I have sociopathic tendencies when provoked, so I assumed it was a professional diagnosis. It wasn't, it was just his professional observation. Furthermore, my 22-year-old son had no intention of causing harm to P. He expressed what he did out of wrath. Update, the end and farewell. Sue became my ex-wife on April 13th, exactly 1 month ago. My lawyer first told me that it would go through on the 18th, but because of the reduction of COVID cases here in NYC, it was pushed through a few days earlier. My lawyer, Jeff, called me on April 12th and asked me to come see him the next day. When I did, he handed me the finalization notification and shook my hand. I couldn't leave it at that, so I went in, hugged him, and thanked him for everything he had done for me. On the way home, all I could think about was watching mental movies of everything from the preceding 24 years of my life. All the memories. All the history. When I walked into my flat, it happened. When I hit the floor, all of the emotions that had been bottled up inside me came out. I hadn't sobbed like that in years, and it wasn't a sad cry by any means. My spirit felt as if it had been set free from the lowest, darkest depths. My first call that night was at 22. I kept it brief and nice, implying that it was official and that his mother and I were no longer married as of that day. He asked how I was feeling. I'm sure he could hear my voice that I had been crying, and I answered I was okay. Then 17 got on the phone and we talked for almost 90 minutes. 22 and his fiancée have done a fantastic job of caring for him, and he, like me, continues to receive treatment. I won't go into detail about what we discussed, but I will say that there is still a lot of work to be done, especially with his perspective on relationships. Nina came to see me later that night as she often did, and I certainly told her the news. She simply wrapped her arms around my waist and embraced me tightly, and I cried again. Nina reassured me, "No matter what, I will never betray you, and I love you with all my heart." I know it is all true. I may face some criticism for saying this, but I do not regret the life I built with Sue. Despite everything, she gave me 2 strong sons. But it is clear today that I chose the wrong woman. Nina has given so much in the previous 4.5 months while asking for almost little in return. She only requests that I be there for her. I don't want to go on about her, but she's my actual hero. There have also been a few unexpected events since the divorce was finalized. For example, P approached me immediately. Yes, he messaged me on Reddit. It turns out he saw the story when it went viral on YouTube and immediately recognized it as about him. Before anyone asks, I will not reveal his Reddit username. I think I've made the kids suffer enough. The first thing he did was apologize for his involvement in all of this. He informed me what the results of the binder I sent to his mother were. Essentially, he has been excommunicated by his family. His mother, as I discovered while plotting my retribution, is a devout Catholic woman, the in church 3 days a week, no mea patria spiritus sancti, type of devout. So her views on marriage are sacrosanct, and learning that her son had recently ended a nearly 25-year marriage sent her into a frenzy. She fired him the same day, and he was fired within a week of his employer receiving the binder I provided. He has been couch surfing and seeking a new job ever since. He claimed he wanted to contact me on social media, all the places he blocked me while screwing Sue, but admits he was afraid because, in his words, if I was able to find him before, I could find him again. I admit that I could have totally devastated this youngster, but I chose not to. I asked when he last saw Sue and he said he hadn't in months. Sue told him to forget about her and go on with his life the last time he spoke with her, much like she told me the last time I spoke with her. So she was not lying about it. I asked the boy some additional questions, and he was surprisingly forthcoming. I assume he was seeking some type of restitution for the havoc he had created himself. Much of what he said was consistent with what I had learnt from the text material I got. I didn't say anything. I just asked, and he responded. The talk went on for around 20 minutes until he apologized again. That's when I hit him with this. Copy and paste the following from the conversation. You're a 27-year-old man who must spend the rest of his life knowing that your own mother despises you for ending a marriage that lasted nearly as long as you've been alive. I understand you messaged me because karma is bugging you, but I will not bring you closure. When I was 27, I was building a legacy. You are currently a homeless, unemployed homewrecker. If you are intelligent, you will gain from this lecture. If you are not, you will be a disaster until you reach my age, assuming you live that long. I wish you luck, but you don't need it. You should get your act together. I completed our talk and blocked him. Clearly, this was not the kind of closure he was looking for. And I could have been much more harsh, but I believe those statements are enough to haunt him. The next significant event is Nina's transition into Mrs. Frog on May 4, 2021. Over the last 2 months, we've had extensive discussions about where we want to go. Nina made it abundantly clear that she has no intention of ever being with anyone other than me, and she desires my namesake. She wants to be my wife and has asked me to adopt Anna, her daughter. I've said it before, I adore this kid. She's 6 years old now, her birthday was last month, and she idolizes me. I am the first father figure she has known since her biological father abandoned her when she was 4. Nina has made it a point not to introduce Anna to any man she has been involved with unless they have made a long-term commitment. Needless to say, I have perseverance and experience raising children. Anna and 17 complement each other perfectly. The big brother-little sister dynamic between them is both lovely and sweet. 17 has formed a deep bond to Anna and appreciates it. I told my therapist about it, and he said that's a positive sign. 17 sees the innocence he wishes to preserve in Anna, despite the fact that his own innocence has been shattered. So last Monday, we decided to go to City Hall and pull the trigger. It took 24 hours to receive the marriage license, and the outcome was the most unremarkable ever envisioned. I addressed it as if no one had seen it coming, and Big Sis said, now placing bets on when the now expecting post goes up. We thought we were keeping our relationship a secret for months, but practically everyone figured it out. So great. That was hilarious. Some might believe it was too soon, and I've mentioned in earlier remarks that I will never marry again. However, this occurred before Nina and I developed a meaningful relationship. This woman has declared her undying and unconditional love for me. She has cried in my arms, telling me how happy she is and how she never thought she'd be able to be with me. She's gone into great detail about her feelings for me throughout the last 25 years, and how even while married, she mourned the idea that Sue won. I had no idea how deep that rabbit hole was. She even said that she had pondered having an affair with me, but she was never that type of person. Even still, throughout all the years I've known her, she's given me so much while expecting so little in return. Even the woman I married and had 2 children with has never shown me as much affection as Nina does. I'd be silly not to tell her my name. So now she has it, and we are beginning the paperwork for me to adopt Anna. Finally, there's Sue. I haven't spoken with her since my last visit to our marital home 4 months ago, although mutual friends, the ones who remain, send me updates on a daily basis. I learnt from one of those acquaintances, a realtor, that she sold the house and was recruited as a clerical assistant at his company. In doing so, he canceled the assistance payments I was required to make due to her unemployment. She currently lives in a little apartment near his office, which he also helped build. She is still functional, but she is a shadow of the woman she once was. She has acquired little weight and keeps to herself. She comes in, does her work, and rarely interacts with anyone other than him. Most likely since her work-related socializing is where it all started. The last time I heard from her was at the end of March, when I thanked him for watching out for her but advised him that I didn't need any further information. She's no longer my problem. I'm almost certain she knows about Nina and myself, as numerous of our surviving common friends have mentioned us. With 17 just a year away from becoming a legal adult, I have no need to speak with her again, and I won't. And that's it. My journey through betrayal, vengeance, attempted suicide, and mental pain is complete. I'll answer questions and leave a few remarks, but after that, I'm returning to the swamp to live with my new frog bride and her tiny tadpole. Thank you to the thousands of people who have offered me advice, best wishes and compliments during this process. The opportunity to tell my story and help others dealing with the pain of infidelity has humbled and blessed me. I enjoy the new friends I've met on Reddit. I never imagined meeting such attractive people in a place where blatantly negative things might be spoken. Keep it green and pleasant. Reddit. After years of enduring condescending remarks, I finally told my father's infantilizing friend that I hated him. Original post August 10, 2023. Years ago, my dad met Harold through mutual friends, and they hit it off. I was 18 and in college when I met him, and we never had a close relationship. However, he always seemed to think of himself as a family friend and was extremely infantilizing and condescending towards me. Every time I saw him, I'd try to tell myself it wasn't that bad, only for him to prove me wrong less than a minute later. Harold would disrespect my boundaries, say things like, "You're not 19, you're a baby," while I was talking to other people, and patronize me, my education or my hobbies whenever he had the chance. He always noticed that annoyed me, to which he'd playfully ask if I hated him. I always said no, but only for my father's sake. The final straw came the day Harold interrupted a barbecue to say, "I really like you, even though you're an impolite brat." I was 20 years old. I'd been quiet all day, working on a paper during the barbecue, but replied patiently and politely whenever anyone addressed me. And even if that hadn't been the case, I knew he didn't have the right to talk to me like that. After that, I started making an effort to avoid any events I knew he'd be attending. Yesterday was my father's girlfriend's birthday. They threw a small lunch party at my dad's apartment. I went there with my fiancée and our 6-month-old son. Harold was there. I hadn't seen him in months, but he still talked to me as if I was a dumb child. Never mind that I'm engaged, a mother and 26 years old. I spent the whole party ignoring his helpful advice about me being too young to get married or be a mom. It helped that most of the other guests seemed to disagree with him. My baby spent most of the afternoon sleeping. There's a bassinet in my old room. He woke up hungry, so I went to breastfeed him and excused myself from the party for a while. I got back to jokes and comments, all from Harold, about how I was probably struggling if my son was managing to leech me away for so long. He went on to interrupt a conversation I was having with another of my dad's friends to question pretty much everything about my parenting. He doesn't even have custody of his daughter, by the way. And to make more comments about my age. I decided I couldn't take it anymore after he asked if I'd thought about giving my baby up for adoption. I got my son and told my fiancée we were leaving. We said goodbye to everyone except Harold. When we got to the door, Harold came to ask why we were leaving. I tried to make up an excuse, but he kept trying to make us stay. After a small back and forth, he jokingly asked if I hated him. And this time I said, "Yes, I do. Can we go now?" He didn't say anything and we left. On the way home, my fiancé said he was proud of me. My father called this morning to say the opposite, and we had a small fight, but ultimately decided to drop the subject. I'm sure this isn't over, but if it keeps going, it won't be because of me. This is far from my proudest moment, and a small part of me regrets it, but I'm done with that guy. Edit. Jesus Christ Superstar, that's a lot of comments. To answer some common questions, I don't think Harold is in love with me. Harold didn't tell me to give up my son. He asked if I'd thought of doing so when I got pregnant. It was still an awful question, especially since he interrupted a conversation I was having with someone else, my dad's girlfriend's pregnant friend, who was asking about my own pregnancy and delivery, to ask it. I don't like making a big deal out of things unless necessary. If I'm uncomfortable, I leave. If I don't like someone, I avoid them. It's usually less stressful. The fight between me and my father ended when I told him about the adoption comment. I don't think he gets that's not the only reason I left, but it was definitely what broke the camel's back. I really don't need my father to stop being friends with Harold. He's a grown man capable of making his own crappy decisions. I never told my dad I hated Harold because I never thought I had to like him in the first place. He's my father's friend, not mine. And I've been distancing myself from Harold since I was 20, meaning I haven't seen him much in the last 6 years. My fiancé was on the other side of the room and wasn't listening to Harold's comments. I filled him in when we got to the car. He's 100% on my side. Update August 18, 2023. Hey guys. I wasn't going to write an update, but I just got some free time and I figured I'd fill you in. I'll start by addressing the very frequent assumption that Harold has feelings for me. I really don't think that's the case. His comments always came out as annoying and condescending, but never sexual. But I will say that your comments scared the shit out of me. And the fact that the general consensus was "fuck Harold" was weirdly heartwarming. I also want to add that, while I did regret what I said a little bit, I never doubted I'd done the right thing. I think most of my regret came from the fact that my 8 years of keeping the peace were over. It took some time for the relief to sink in. Truth be told, I've been wanting to do this since the barbecue incident, which was when I went from "I don't like that guy" to "I can't stand that guy." My father called Harold the day after I made my previous post. When confronted about the adoption comment, he tried to twist it as him being genuinely concerned about me being a mom so soon, and that he didn't think I knew what I was doing. He did apologize to my father. I don't buy any of that. The next day, my dad told me about the call. He said I should forgive Harold for what he thought was an honest misunderstanding. He also told me I should apologize too, since I'd overreacted by telling Harold I hated him for such a small reason. Many of Harold's past comments were made with my father close by. It often happened in the middle of conversations with other people, so he'd be too distracted to register them. He also wouldn't notice them most of the time. My dad doesn't pay enough attention to anything that doesn't either concern or anger him, and he'll most likely forget it until he gets angry at something else later anyway. He's like a meth head goldfish. We also have different definitions of what's offensive, so he'd never think they were a big deal. I told my father I wasn't exaggerating when I said I hated Harold, and that the adoption comment was far from being the only reason. I listed most of the condescending treatment and comments I could remember, including the ones from the party. He didn't remember any of them. I made it very clear that I'd hated Harold for years prior to the party, and that I had nothing to apologize for. I then stated that I'm no longer coming to any events Harold is invited to. My father doesn't need to stop being friends with him, or even stop inviting him to stuff, but he can no longer expect me to show up as well. I will ask him beforehand, and if he lies, I'll leave. My father called me dramatic, but I pointed out that I've been avoiding Harold for 6 years now and no one even noticed, so it clearly wasn't a problem. I've only seen him a handful of times since the barbecue incident, and only twice for more than a few minutes, the lunch party last week and another party back when I was pregnant. It clearly didn't ruin my father's life. I'm not obliged to like his friends any more than he is to like mine. There was some back and forth, but he agreed to my terms. We spoke yesterday about something else, and he mentioned Harold was upset. I ignored that. I'm not going NC with my father. Yes, I'm very well aware he's an asshole, and I came really close to cutting ties with him in the last few years, but I ultimately decided it wouldn't really fix anything. Maintaining my relationship with him has gotten a lot easier since I moved out, as we only see each other a couple times a month. He gets frustrated that I don't call or text much, but doesn't complain about it anymore. I don't see the point in going NC with someone who no longer has any say in how I live my life. I'd rather just take note of what my father did wrong when I was growing up and then make sure to raise my own kid differently. He's on thin ice though, and has been for some time. He's not allowed to babysit, mostly because I don't trust him to spend more than an hour alone with a baby without falling asleep on the couch. I began pushing for him to start doing therapy back when I got pregnant, and he finally got started back in June. His behavior around me and my younger sister, who still lives between our very divorced parents, has improved a lot since, and I've made it clear to him that he won't be allowed near my son if he stops attending. This is the first time in my life my father has improved his behavior. It's hard to be hopeful, but I'm trying. And if I ever do go NC with my father, it won't be because of fucking Harold. So that's it. Overall, I'm glad I don't have to deceive anyone anymore. My relationship with my father is rocky, but I won't dwell on it. My main responsibilities are my son, my fiancé, and my job, and that's not changing anytime soon. And to those who mentioned Jesus Christ Superstar and Blue Oyster Cult in my last post, has anyone told you you're fucking awesome today? Because you are. New update, a shortish. Harold update September 11th, 2024. Hey guys. Wow, I can't believe it's been over a year since I last posted about this. I planned on updating some time ago. These past few months, I've been caught up in raising a toddler, getting married, yay, working like crazy and rewatching Supernatural. Needless to say, I've been busy. Openly avoiding Harold has been working pretty well. My father has been respecting my boundaries. Whenever he invites me and my husband over for lunch or dinner, I ask who else will be there. If Harold's coming, he tells me. He hasn't lied so far, and doesn't usually insist when I tell him I'm not coming. Since my last post, I've only seen Harold once, at my dad's birthday party a few months ago. Yes, I knew he'd be there. My father promised he'd tell him not to talk to me. Also, some of my father's friends' kids, most of whom I used to babysit, would be there. I hadn't seen them in a while, and I love them more than I hate Harold. I ended up spending most of the party with my son and the kids. Harold didn't talk to me at all, so I guess my father was true to his word. My husband and I did catch him staring at us a couple times, but I decided to ignore it. I caught my husband staring back once, and the walking marshmallow I married actually managed to look threatening. I love this man. You know who did talk to me? Harold's girlfriend. Yes, he has one now. She interacted with me twice. First, she came over to coo over my son before making a comment about how he needed a haircut. Ha ha ha, I already hate you. Later, she approached me and said, "You're shy, aren't you?" I said no. She laughed and said, "Yeah, you're shy." She said all that in the same tone one would use to talk to a 6-year-old. I managed to keep my expression schooled. Otherwise, I would have told her I'm not shy. I just chose to spend the whole party with the kids because they were better company than her and her annoying ass boyfriend. So yeah, based on both my interactions with her, Harold's girlfriend is insufferable. In other words, they're perfect for each other. I don't have much else to add. My father broke up with the woman he was dating last year, long fucking story, and has a new girlfriend. She is not annoying or psychotic, and I actually really like her. They won't last a year. My relationship with my father is still not perfect, by the way, but it has improved. He's actually started apologizing to me a lot more often. I don't know whether it's the therapy or the fact that motherhood has apparently made me terrifying, but I'll take it. And I'll give credit where it's due. He's a very good grandfather. I'm also glad my father is respecting this Harold boundary. I very much don't want this man in my life. Honestly, I'm pretty satisfied right now. My little boy is thriving. Part of me really misses the baby times, but I grow prouder and prouder every day. Getting to know my kid has been fantastic. I just found out that my wife has been cheating on me with multiple partners for the past 2 years. Original post, August 3, 2024. I'm in shock and I really need some advice right now. Me, 40M, and my wife, 37F, have been married for 10 years, and we recently celebrated our anniversary. We have 2 wonderful kids together. Since the beginning of the year, things have been off between us. She's been acting strangely since the beginning of the year, irritable, avoiding me, and we haven't been intimate much. Some days she's happy, some others fully irritated. Sometimes she's a great mother to our kids. Some other times she wishes they had never been born. Recently, I had to go to the urologist for a urinary tract infection, and the test suggested it might be an STD. This was a huge shock because I've never been with anyone other than my wife since we started dating. Right now, she's away at a so-called business seminar, of which I talked about in a different post. She has been keeping diaries for over a decade, and out of desperation, I read them for the first time ever. It turns out she's been having multiple sexual partners for the past 2 years. In particular, there was one affair that lasted over a year, and it seems part of her irritability was due to her lover moving on to someone else. I also discovered she has a hidden Tinder account too and has been meeting with other men regularly. I am devastated beyond words. I feel lost and unsure of what to do, especially since we have 2 little kids who mean the world to me. I need some advice on how to handle this situation. Should I confront her immediately? Should I consult a lawyer first? How do I even begin to process this betrayal and protect my kids through all of this? Thank you for any guidance you can offer in this incredibly difficult time. Additional information from OOP, thank you for all the comments. As everyone's suggesting, I'll try to consult discreetly with a lawyer ASAP, gather as much evidence as I can, get the STD treated, and as painful as it is, perform paternity tests on my kids. To be honest, I'm a complete mess right now and cannot think properly. All kinds of thoughts are crossing my mind. Part of me still loves her and wants to forgive her, the other is just full of disgust and hatred, and wishes I've never even met her at all. I wish I could just disappear right now. Comments. Commenter 1. Copies of evidence to lawyer go full NC, serve her. Don't drink, work out. Good luck. Commenter 2. Get proof, get a lawyer, do what the lawyer says. Commenter 3. Assuming an open marriage has no appeal to you, take a deep breath and start lifting weights and eating right. These will help you process the emotions in a healthy way instead of drowning in the bottle. Don't say anything to her. Document all evidence. Talk a lawyer first before making any moves. It's probably been happening your entire marriage. Get paternity tests on your kids. Suggest 23andMe as something fun. Plan your next move and execute on it like a divine masculine. Treat the divorce and custody battle like a business negotiation. Keep emotions low. Remember, this is going to be extremely traumatizing to your children. Keep their mental health at the forefront always. Do not talk badly about your wife. If she tries to destroy your relationship with them or lay the blame at your feet, just stay calm. Tell them you love them and this is between her and you, but you both love them very much and it's nothing they did. Don't tell them about your wife's indiscretions until they're old enough to handle it, if ever. Update, September 11th, 2024, 1 month later. Thank you all for your invaluable advice and support. It has been a tremendous help during this difficult time. After my last post, my in-laws kindly offered to look after the kids while my wife was away at her seminar. They remain unaware of the turmoil I've been experiencing. I used this time to go through her diaries and take pictures of their contents. Each entry felt like a stab in the back, leaving me in a state of shock and disbelief. I just don't recognize anymore the person I thought I knew and loved for over a decade. To avoid going into too much detail, the revelations in the diaries would make any movie or TV series I've ever seen pale in comparison. She has been involved with at least 6 different men over the past 2 years. These affairs occurred not only during her so-called seminars but also during short business trips, dinners and other supposed work-related events. Meanwhile, I was at home, taking care of the kids and naively believing I was supporting her career. Some entries vividly describe how great these encounters were for her, all while expressing gratitude towards me for being a devoted husband and father, without a single trace of remorse. This lack of guilt and the extent of her deception make me question her emotional and mental state. While reading through the diaries, I felt an overwhelming sense of despair and was seriously contemplating suicide. In the end, I sought refuge with friends for a few days, as I felt I couldn't be alone, otherwise I'd do something that could never be taken back. They really supported me a lot during this time and helped me get in contact with a therapist. I'm now taking regular therapy sessions once per week. They also help me in getting in touch with lawyers specializing in divorce. I'm also getting treatment for my STD as well. Returning home after picking up the kids from my in-laws was an emotionally devastating experience. I couldn't bring myself to smile at all. At some point, while contemplating all the possible ways I could end my life, my daughter just looked at me and saw my face. Without saying a word, she just came over and wrapped her arms around me. At that moment I broke down, held her tightly and burst into tears in front of her. She's my sweet angel, and the shame of having considered leaving my kids to suffer under their mother's disdain was almost too much to bear. For the first few weeks after finding out, I could barely sleep at all and had to depend on sleeping pills just to get through the nights. My motivation was at an all-time low, affecting both my home life and my work. I forced myself to continue exercising, and found out it was the only thing that actually made me feel better during this time. To whoever said in the previous post that I shouldn't give up on doing exercise, thank you, you may have just saved my life. The stress intensified after my wife returned from her trip. Initially, it took all my energy to hide my disgust at her and the knowledge I had gained about her actions. I've somewhat got used to this now, but it remains emotionally draining. She did notice that something was off, but still appears to believe that I am entirely unaware of what has transpired. Her lack of shame is staggering. Just recently, she asked me to buy her the expensive gift I promised her for our 10-year anniversary, for which I made an excuse to not buy yet, despite her going into another business trip just the day after our anniversary, which was described in extremely painful detail in her diaries. To make matters worse, she was even arranging to meet her latest partner on the day of my birthday. Nowadays I've started to feel a lot better, thanks to exercise and therapy. I had never been to a therapist before in my life, and to be honest, I am regretting not having done it sooner. Despite my wife betraying me in the worst possible way, part of me still thought that maybe all of this was my fault. Maybe if I had done this. If I had put more effort into that. I blamed myself for a lot of things. My therapist helped me see through it that, while I could have done some things differently, in the end, I cannot be held responsible for the actions she chose to take, and no one deserves to be betrayed in the way I was. If I'm at fault for anything, it's for blaming myself for everything, always putting her needs ahead of my own, and trusting her unconditionally without question. While it was extremely hard for me to balance work and looking after the kids alone every time she went on any of these trips, I always let her go after convincing myself that I was doing it for her, to support her business, to let her relieve stress from being at home. That this is what a supportive husband would do. And that if maybe I had a better job or made her happier, she wouldn't feel the need to escape from home. I'd be lying if I said I'm not depressed anymore, but I'm certainly doing much better these days. Nowadays, I feel more rage rather than sadness, and it is the rage that's keeping me going. My therapist advised me to channel this rage into the things I do, which has worked surprisingly well. I talked with 2 law firms about my situation, and was advised to collect more evidence, which I've been devoting myself to for the past few weeks. I've finished digitizing all of her diaries from the past 2 years, which were quite a lot. I got access to her computer and found just way too many photos, chat conversations and documents to help my case. She's been posting all of her adventures into a very distorted private group in Facebook, to which I've also taken plenty of screenshots of. I've compiled a list of all of her sexual partners in the diaries, and have been identifying them one by one on social media, etc. I've gathered everything I could on her current sexual partners, and managed to figure out where they live and/or work. Now I'm debating whether I should confront them or not. The things I've read in these diaries are so bizarre that I thought maybe she was just writing material for some sort of twisted novel, that is, until I found all the other stuff in her computer, etc. Maybe I'm broken myself as well, but a part of me is actually enjoying this process of gathering all these tiny pieces of evidence and information, cross-referencing them with her diaries and finding everything I can about her and her lovers. Part of me wants to see her burn on social media by posting directly everything I've found out, since a big part of her business is centered around social media, but I'm refraining myself from doing so since this would also affect both me and the kids, as well as her parents, who have been nothing but kind to me since we got married. I'm also not sure if I should bring this to light to her parents as well, since this will probably devastate them. I'm planning on confronting her after talking further with the lawyers about how to make sure to gain custody of my kids. The country I live in has a rather unfair tendency of granting custody to the mother, even if she's unfit for it. Setting the terms of the divorce and child support. In any case, thank you all for the advice. A few weeks ago I was in full despair and had no idea what to do nor how to approach the situation. Nowadays, I feel that little by little I'm digging myself out of this hole I've been thrown into. Sorry if I don't respond to all your comments. Right now my full attention is devoted to protecting my kids. Commenter 1. Well, let's hope you talk to your lawyer again soon. I'm not sure why you need more evidence, but you have plenty now. Have her serve in public. Heck, even at a seminar she is supposedly at. Commenter 2. Don't confront. Don't let her know a damn thing until you have all of your ducks in a row. Don't post anything on social media. Don't confront any of her lovers. Just keep doing what you're doing. Let her find out when she's served. Commenter 3. What an absolute piece of shit your wife is. Document and keep gathering information to do everything you can to get full custody of your children. Do it for them. They'll grow up and come to understand that their mother is a mentally ill whore that destroyed their family. Keep going to therapy and see a psychiatrist and get on medication if they deem it needed. You need to keep your nerve and a level head as you go through this. Meanwhile, look up Grey Rock and 180. Neighbor's shed encroaches on our property, stalling house plans for over a year. How can I finally get it removed after battling him for so long? Original post July 3, 2024. My dad owns a vacant but desirable property in NY, neither of us currently reside there. He is passing the property along to me so I can build a house to live there. The property has been in my family since 1937. It took about $10K for him to get the title cleaned up with a lawyer. Last spring I had a survey done that showed the neighbor's shed encroaches on the property by about 7. Setback is 12, so needs to move around 19 back. The neighbor even said to my surveyor that my dad should just sell him the land. With this encroachment my dad is unable to pass along a clean title to me, and without a clean title I'm not able to secure a home building loan. I was going to work with the neighbor to amicably remove the shed, but he swiftly blocked my number and didn't answer his door when I was in town last August. I looked into the town codes and the penalty for the violation is $100 a week. He also does not have a permit for this shed, which is necessary per the town's code of any structure over 120 square feet requiring a permit. Since I didn't live there, I got the city involved. The building inspector told him to remove the shed from our property. Neighbor ignored and refused for about 5 months. Then the building inspector had the city attorney write him a letter in January giving him 60 days to respond. The inspector has not given us a copy of the letter. We've requested it multiple times now, so I'm unsure of what all was said in the letter. I've also requested that the inspector enforce the penalties as well as an injunction to padlock his shed for further use. Those requests were ignored as well. We didn't hear back for about 90 days from the neighbor after the attorney's letter, but he agreed to move the shed. Woohoo, right? He then said we need to get surveyors to pin where he should move his shed so he doesn't have to do it twice. We have 3 different surveys of the property, and there are pins at each corner. I called our surveyor and it would be $700 to mark where he should move the shed. I felt that I shouldn't be responsible for getting his shed into compliance. This is his violation and I've been patiently waiting and delaying an entire year. I don't care if he isn't within the full means of the 12 setback, he just needs it off my property to appease me at this point. Initially, I was willing to get the surveyor out again and pay for it. But my concern is that if we do that, he's still not going to move it in a timely manner and keep moving the goalposts for us. Neighbor even said it would take 5 months after we pin the property. I don't know why he thinks it will take 5 months to move the shed. I called around and got a quote from shed movers. One said they could do it next week for $575. I've got a lawyer in my back pocket who will be my last-ditch effort. It's expensive. A letter alone will be $1,500, and will take a long time, so I don't love that idea. He said we could do a revocable license for the bit of land, but I'm not giving the neighbor anything at this point. I want to put a driveway and definitely a fence there now too, so I'll need that land. At this point I understand why my neighbor is being a jerk. He wants to get away with whatever he can. But I can't understand why the building inspector is letting him get away with everything. Why no penalties? Why no injunctions? He was very unhappy when I called the town clerk and asked for more information because the inspector doesn't answer mine. He's been so ineffective on this and it's having real repercussions for us. We're renting in an HCOL area that we don't like and would love to have made progress this year to move ASAP. The neighbor should have racked up at least $4,400 in penalties so far, and an additional $2,000 for the 5 months he wants to tack on. I feel like that would invoke actual pressure for him to move it, right? So what is my next step here to get this done ASAP? Is there someone above the inspector with the city that can help me with this? How can I get the town to actually enforce the movement of this shed and its penalties without being such wet noodles about it? Any ideas? Relevant comments. Turk Gonzo, 75. This is brutal. Once this is all settled and your house is done, you're going to have to live next door to that asshole. OOP, IKR. We're budgeting for a very big fence and floodlights. SLP 1965. Does this neighbor have connections with the government? Is it a good old boy kind of place? Seems so fishy. OOP. You're not the first one to ask this exact same question with the same phrasing. I don't believe so. I think the inspector is just ineffective, but who knows? Commenter, it's on your family's property. I'd burn it down. OOP, ha, yeah, trust me. We've thought about that a million times. Editor's note. OOP rehashes the OG post, editing that part out. So yeah, everyone wants me to burn this shed down, bulldoze it, see it on the property line, or just move it myself. This is in a small town in NY. I don't want to cause waves with neighbors and I need the building inspector to not hate me when I build my house. I'm not going to destroy his property, but I'm interested in moving it myself. Is it legal for me to do that since he's been given so many notices and the town has ordered it to be moved? If I give him a notice, is that enough, or do we need to have an attorney write a letter? My concern is that our neighbor seems like he's got money to mess with us and I don't want any repercussions falling on my dad. I'm afraid he'd sue for some kind of damages or trespassing or something. IDK, he's a jerk. Could we be held liable for this even if we give warning? What are my actual options here and how to go about this with the lowest risk of repercussions? Update September 11th, 2024. So a few weeks back I went to Home Depot and we bought a Sawzall. We went to the neighbor's property in the middle of the night and, nah, not really. For all you burn it downers and Sawzall it sayers, my attorney said by no means do anything like that. He said do not touch it, in any way, ever. So thank you to everyone for the solid and rational advice of talking to attorneys and, as frustrating as it is, utilizing our government resources as recounted below. So I escalated this with the town and bothered them to no end. I got all the way up to the town supervisor and he was very frustrated on my behalf. I told him I've been dealing with this situation for a year, that the neighbor has been told to move the shed by the inspector and town attorney, that I've already had 3 surveys of the land to prove the encroachment, and that the property is properly demarcated with pins. He asked why the building inspector was having yet another surveyor go out there and said he would just have someone measure where the shed needs to be moved using the survey. He says he will personally get involved in this and will give the neighbor 1 week to get his shed moved. I get a call back with him later that day with a junior building inspector, taking direction from the senior inspector while he's out of town. On the line and womp womp, he totally changes his tune. He said I have to get a surveyor to go out there to pin the property line again, but specifically next to the shed. They could never answer me why it was my responsibility to pin a specific spot on my property for a shed that shouldn't exist there in the first place, solely for the benefit of the neighbor figuring out how far back to move his shed to get it into compliance. I'm fuming now, and I also figured out that the senior inspector forgot that I had sent him the third survey showing the encroachment in the spring, which should have begun the penalty violations. He also didn't provide that to the neighbor who needed it and had been asking for it. He just thought I didn't provide the survey. Even the junior inspector was embarrassed and frustrated for his lack of help and thoroughness with my case. At this point, I'm still adamant that I don't want to get another surveyor out there. It will just take too long. I talked to a lawyer that would be less expensive than a surveyor and pretty much said this was a slam dunk win that would enforce the removal ASAP. We're still trying to tread lightly though, so we don't piss off my future home's building inspector too much with the threats of using an attorney, but we desperately need results. My dad's an engineer and comes up with an idea that we present to the junior inspector. We'll use the shed as the property line pin to mark the setback for the neighbor. The shed is shown on the survey and we can see where the property line crosses through the shed, so we just need to measure and mark those places IRL. It's stupidly simple and similar to an idea I mentioned months ago about measuring the setback from the shed, but they approved it. I used the survey's CAD files to set up the measurements for where to pin the property line and 6 setback lines. In my last post, the setbacks were at 12, but changed at some point that month. Another piece of important information that the building inspector forgot to mention to me. When my dad and husband went out to go mark the shed using line of sight, they met up with the neighbor and he was so unbelievably nice. Mind you, we've all been blocked, ignored, had our no trespassing signs taken down, and been told in the past that we should just sell him the property. Now he's making friends with my husband, giving him a tour of his house, talking Scotch, sharing contractor info with him, etc. I'm baffled hearing this and don't trust it but welcome it for the moment. Then my husband tells me the neighbor's wife is rude to him and pissed that we didn't get the additional survey, didn't like that we were doing it this way, etc. The neighbor hushes her and she goes off to pout the rest of the day. My theory is that maybe the wife is the one doing all the blocking and snagging this up. The neighbor apparently had a heart attack earlier this year, so I wonder if she took over his communications. When this first started last year, they mentioned that they tried to buy our property so their son could live on it. Apparently it's just her son, his stepson. I think she drove some of this conflict and he may be giving it up or just changing his tune after his heart attack. Ever since then he's been friendly toward us, which I'm relieved about. So after the pinning of the property line and marking the 6 setback, the building inspector approved our work and then gave the neighbor another month to get this scheduled with a mover and finally moved. After about a month and a half I didn't hear from the inspector, so we gave the town a call. It had been moved. We went forward with our final survey to confirm that our land is clear of encroachments. It's cleared, but the neighbor only moved it 3.6 off the property line, short of the 6 setback. WTAF? I got a letter today from the building inspector saying he passed it and the case is officially closed. I absolutely do not care that it's only 3.6 back instead of 6. I'm just glad he's off my land and can now move forward. But seriously? I don't know how this got approved, but I'm in awe of the incompetence of the inspector. I guess I'll just have to see what all I can get away with too. Anyways, that's my shed saga. Thanks for reading. TLDR, I escalated the issue of my neighbor's encroaching shed to the town, finally reaching the supervisor who sympathized with my year-long frustration over the shed encroaching on our property. Despite previous surveys proving the encroachment, the building inspector asked for yet another surveyor to pin the property, which made no sense. After much back and forth, my dad, an engineer, suggested using the shed itself as a marker for the property line. Surprisingly, the junior inspector approved this. When my dad and husband marked the property line, the neighbor, once uncooperative, was suddenly friendly. After some delays, the shed was moved, though only 3.6 feet instead of the required 6 feet. Despite the inspector closing the case, I'm relieved it's off my land and can finally move forward, though baffled by the whole ordeal. Brother got my fiancée pregnant before our wedding. Now my family wants me to forgive them, but I told them to fuck off and moved away. This is going to be a long story, and it's just as crazy as it sounds. I'll try to be as succinct as possible, but there's a lot to cover here. I don't care if anyone believes this or not. It's so absurd that I need to vent. Also, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. But I will omit any specifics that could identify me to anyone who is unfamiliar with the scenario. I'm 32 years old, and until a few months ago, I was engaged to my 5-year girlfriend. We'll call her Sarah. My younger brother Mike is 29 and has always been the golden kid in our family. To truly grasp the gravity of this betrayal and why it has hit me so hard, I need to give you some background on my family and how we arrived at this point. Growing up, Mike could do no wrong in our parents' eyes, whereas I was continually chastised and punished for minor infractions. This wasn't your average sibling rivalry or subtle favoritism, it was obvious and intense. Mike would break something and I would be accused. He'd start a fight, and I'd get grounded. If we both got straight A's, he'd get a new video game console, and I'd get a pat on the back and a reminder to keep it up. Our parents, Tom and Linda, were constantly making excuses for their actions. Mike's younger, he needs more attention, nor, you're the older one, you should know better. Nor, Mike's just more sensitive, we have to be careful with him. The relentless assault of false standards and gaslighting made me feel useless and despised in my own house. As we grew older, the preference became more evident. When I was accepted into a good college on a partial scholarship, my parents scarcely recognized it. However, when Mike opted to attend community college, they gave him a lavish celebration and purchased him a car to travel in. Never mind that I had been biking 5 miles each way to my part-time job for several years. I moved out as quickly as possible to avoid the toxic environment at home. I supported myself through college by working 2 jobs and taking out loans. Meanwhile, Mike dropped school after 1 semester, citing that college was not for him. Our parents wholeheartedly backed his decision, commending him for knowing himself and not conforming to societal expectations. They even financed his string of failed business enterprises over the following few years. Regardless of how much distance I tried to put between myself and my family, they always found a way to bring me back. Holiday dinners were a nightmare of subtle insults and not so subtle parallels. "Oh, you're still in that entry-level position? Well, Mike is considering establishing another business. He's very entrepreneurial." Never mind that I was establishing a secure profession while Mike depleted our parents' retirement money. Despite everything, I tried to keep my friendship with Mike. He was still my brother after all. However, it was always one-sided. I'd reach out and attempt to connect, but he'd either ignore me or find a way to make the conversation into a game he could win. If I was promoted, he would suddenly have a big opportunity coming up. If I started dating someone, he would inevitably be in a serious relationship. I met Sarah while trying to reunite with Mike. She was a friend of one of his short-lived girlfriends and we clicked immediately. Sarah was everything I wanted in a partner: brilliant, humorous, kind, and stunningly beautiful. We began dating, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly satisfied and valued. My folks, obviously, were not pleased. They made sarcastic remarks about Sarah being out of my league and asked what she saw in me. Mike, on the other hand, became quite interested in my life. He was always asking about Sarah, wanting to know everything about her. At the moment, I was just relieved that he seemed to care about things in my life. Looking back, I should have noticed the red flags. Sarah and I moved in together after a year of dating, and it was fantastic. We both had solid professions, traveled, and discussed the future. I began to believe that, just maybe, I could have the life I had always desired. A good profession, a loving partner, and perhaps children eventually. I proposed to Sarah on our 4th anniversary. It was nothing fancy, simply a simple supper at home and a moving speech. I was ecstatic when she said yes. We planned to have a long engagement and spend our time arranging the wedding. We weren't rushing, we had our entire lives ahead of us, or so I believed. When we told my family about our engagement, their emotions were diverse, to say the least. My mother put on a fake smile and remarked, "Oh, how nice," in a tone that implied it was anything but. My father grunted and murmured, "Good luck with that," before returning to the television. Mike, however, had the weirdest reaction. He congratulated us, but there was something strange about his smile, almost predatory. I dismissed it at the time, attributing it to my own fears. The following year was filled with wedding plans and job stress. Sarah and I were both working long hours at our jobs to save up for the wedding and a down payment on a home. We hadn't seen each other as much as we used to, but I assumed it was simply a phase. Every partnership goes through difficult times, right? Looking back, I should have seen the indications. Sarah grew distant, always on her phone, smiling at texts from people she swiftly dismissed as business friends. She began going out more with her companions, arriving home late and smelling of wine and cologne. But I fully trusted her. I never considered that she may be cheating, let alone with my own brother. Sarah began acting strangely around 4 months ago. She was moody, irritated, and always nauseous. I was excited by the possibility that she might be pregnant. We hadn't tried, but we had discussed the possibility of having children in the future. I began to plan how I would help her, thinking nursery colors and baby names. Then one night, she sat me down with tears in her eyes and delivered the bomb. She was pregnant, but it was not mine. I was stunned. We hadn't been intimate in a while due to our hectic schedules, but I never expected her to cheat on me. When I asked who the father was, she broke down and mumbled, "It's Mike." My entire universe came crashing down at that moment. Everything I thought I knew, everything I had based my existence on, came crumbling down. I could not breathe. I could not think. All I could feel was an overwhelming sense of betrayal and loss. Sarah attempted to explain, her words coming out quickly between sobbing. Apparently, it began during our engagement party. Mike had approached her and informed her that she was making a mistake by marrying me. He played on her insecurities, telling her she could do better and that he could provide her with everything I couldn't. It wasn't a one-time occurrence. They'd been having an affair for months. I kicked Sarah out that night. I couldn't bear to look at her or be in the same room with the lady who had deceived me so totally. She begged me to forgive her, explaining that it was a mistake and that she loved me. But all I could think of was how many times she had lied to my face and been with my brother while wearing the ring I had given her. After Sarah left, I contacted Mike. I can't recall what I said, it was all a swirl of wrath and pain. He initially tried to play it casual, claiming that it was merely a drunken mistake and had no meaning. But when I questioned him, he became defensive, saying, "Well, maybe if you'd been a better fiancé, she wouldn't have come to me." I saw red. I got into my car and headed to his apartment, determined to do something that would make him regret what he said. I'm not sure what I was planning to do, but when I arrived, our parents were already there. Mike apparently called them first, telling them a narrative about Sarah seducing him and how sorry he was. And you know what? They believed him. They always do. My mother immediately began lecturing me about forgiveness and family, while my father simply stood there with his arms crossed, looking disappointed in me, but not in his beloved Mike. I tried to explain what had actually happened, but they wouldn't listen. They kept telling me that I needed to forgive Mike and support Sarah throughout her pregnancy because family comes first. I lost it. Years of pent-up resentment and anger spilled forth. I told them exactly how I felt about their twisted sense of devotion, how they'd always favored Mike over me, and how they'd never taken my side or backed me. I told Mike that he was no longer my brother and that he had died. I told my parents they could have the son they'd always wanted because they didn't have me. I stormed off, ignoring their cries and pleads. I drove for hours with no destination in mind, only a want to be away from everything and everyone. When I eventually got home, I discovered dozens of missed calls and messages. Sarah begged for another opportunity, as Mike alternated between apologies and accusations. The majority, however, came from my parents, who demanded that I grow up and make amends. I ignored them all, rarely eating and sleeping. I called out of work, depleting all of my vacation days. I couldn't face anyone and couldn't handle the prospect of explaining what had happened. I just sat in my apartment, revisiting every detail of my relationship with Sarah and every interaction with Mike, trying to figure out where I went wrong. It has been 3 months now. I've relocated to a new apartment, changed my phone number and begun treatment to deal with all of this. But my family will not give up. Despite my efforts to cut off communication, they continue to intrude in my life. They've begun showing up at my office, attempting to ambush me and push a reconciliation. My mother confronts me in the parking lot, wailing about how I'm ripping the family apart. My father left harsh voicemails telling me to man up and forgive Mike. Mike himself has attempted to approach me several times, but I've managed to dodge him thus far. They've even dispatched flying monkeys disguised as extended family members to guilt-trip me into forgiving Mike. Aunts, uncles, and cousins I haven't spoken to in years are suddenly calling, telling me how important family is and how I should let bygones be bygones. It's as if they're in another reality where Mike and Sarah made a little mistake rather than a life-altering one. I received a message from Sarah yesterday. She is keeping the baby and intends to co-parent with Mike. And guess what? My parents are overjoyed to become grandparents, forgetting the circumstances and the harsh remarks they used to make when Sarah was with me. The letter was full of apologies and explanations, including how she and Mike discovered real love via this terrible scenario. She even had the nerve to suggest that she hoped we could all become friends eventually for the sake of the child. I am at my wit's end. Part of me wishes to sever ties altogether and start over somewhere else, perhaps moving to another state, changing my identity and creating a new life where no one knows about this mess. But another part of me is so outraged that I want to stay and fight, to show them how twisted up the situation is. I don't know what to do now. The treachery has had an impact on all aspects of my life. I cannot take being alone with my thoughts. I haven't even considered dating again. The idea of trusting someone like that scares me. I've also lost friends over this. Those who believe I should take the high road and reunite with my family. As if I'm terrible for refusing to play happy families with the people who have wounded me the most. The idea of Sarah and Mike raising a kid together, a child who should have been mine, is like a continual stab in my gut. I understand cognitively that the child is innocent in all of this. It is not the baby's fault that its parents are lying, cheating scumbags, but I can't bring myself to feel good about its existence. My parents have begun to discuss how I should be involved in the child's life and how I will become an uncle. The concept makes me feel physically ill. How can I look at this youngster and not recognize the ultimate emblem of my brother's betrayal? So, Reddit, I guess my question is: am I the idiot for refusing to forgive my brother and ex-fiancé? Am I wrong to want to lose relations with my family over this? Any help on how to proceed would be greatly appreciated, as I now feel like I'm drowning in a sea of treachery and gaslighting. I apologize for the lengthy post. If you made it this far, I appreciate it. Writing all of this down has been cathartic in a way. I'm not sure what I hope to gain from sharing this: validation, guidance, or simply the opportunity to scream into the void and have someone, anybody, hear me. Edit. Holy God, this exploded up overnight. Thank you all for your help and advice. I'm astonished by the response, and it will take me some time to look through all of the comments. However, I wanted to answer a few typical questions. 1. Yes, I have consulted with a lawyer about getting a restraining order against my family. It is currently in progress. 2. I don't intend to have any contact with the baby. It's not the child's fault, but I can't become involved without losing my sanity. 3. For those who have inquired about my job, I have already spoken with HR about the situation. They are aware and supportive. They have strengthened security at the front desk and offered me the option to work from home more frequently. I am grateful for their understanding. 4. Many of you have inquired whether I had contemplated relocating to another city or state. It is definitely something I am thinking about. My company has offices in several other cities, so a transfer may be possible. I'm considering the advantages and cons. 5. To those suggesting a DNA test. Sarah acknowledged the affair, and the timeline is consistent. I see no reason to suspect the child is not Mike's. Even if it was mine, I doubt I could ever look at that child without thinking about this. 6. I've been overwhelmed by the number of people who have had similar experiences. It's upsetting to realize how widespread this type of betrayal is, but it's also strangely comforting to know that I'm not alone. Thank you all for being vulnerable and sharing. 7. To the individual who inquired if I had considered taking legal action against Mike for alienation of affection, I looked into it, but it is not recognized in my state. Even if it were, I don't think I have the energy for a legal battle right now. 8. Several people have noted that Mike's behavior appears narcissistic. I've started reading about narcissistic personality disorder, and much of it rings true. It helps me comprehend, but does not excuse, some of his acts. 9. Those who have inquired about Sarah's family are as startled and appalled as one could anticipate. They have cut off communication with her and have reached out to offer me their support. It's a minor comfort, but I value it. 10. To the individual who asked if I'd considered having my own children someday. Honestly, this entire experience has made me wonder whether I want to have a family at all. But I'm trying not to make any major decisions while I analyze everything. I'll keep you updated if anything big happens, but for the time being my focus is on recovering and moving ahead. Thank you again, Reddit. You have helped more than you realize. Your encouragement and suggestions have given me a lot to think about, and they have truly been a lifeline during this tough time. I may not be able to answer every remark, but please know that I read them all and they are making me feel less alone in this. Update. Hello Reddit. It's been approximately 2 weeks since my previous post, and it has been a full roller coaster. First, thank you all for your enormous support and suggestions. I never anticipated my post to go so viral, and going through all of your responses has been both upsetting and oddly reassuring. It's disturbing how regular this type of deception is. The last several weeks have been tough, to say the least. Remember how I said I was working on obtaining a restraining order? That evolved into a huge ordeal. My lawyer filed the paperwork and we had a hearing arranged. I assumed it would be simple, given the proof and the ongoing harassment, but I was mistaken. My parents arrived at the court with their own lawyer, Some fancy guy in an expensive suit who likely charges more per hour than I do in a week. They attempted to portray me as the crazy one, claiming I was ripping the family apart over a simple misunderstanding, as if Mike had stumbled and fallen into my fiancé. Fortunately, the judge didn't buy it. She issued the restraining order against Mike and my parents, but only after my mother fell into tears in court and my father glared at me as if I had committed murder. The look on Mike's face, however, I swear if looks could kill, I would be dead. As we were leaving the courthouse, Mike attempted to approach me. My lawyer stepped in between us, reminding him of the newly issued restraining order. Mike merely scoffed and said this wasn't over, and I couldn't hide behind a piece of paper forever. I'd be lying if I claimed his words didn't shake me. But at the very least, I have some legal protection. The job situation has been another nightmare. Remember when I mentioned that my family had been showing up at my workplace? This came to a head last week. I was in a meeting with a customer when my assistant alerted me that my mother was in the lobby and raising a disturbance. Apparently, she had brought a photo album and was attempting to show my coworkers baby images of Mike and me while lamenting about how close her boys used to be. I excused myself from the meeting and went down to the lobby, where I discovered my mother surrounded by a number of uncomfortable-looking coworkers. She was in the middle of relating a story about how Mike and I used to bathe together as toddlers. When she noticed me, she attempted to rush towards me, talking about a baby shower, but I interrupted her. I told her she had to go right away or I would call the police and have her removed for trespassing and breaking the restraining order. Her expression was as if I had slapped her, but after everything they had put me through, I couldn't bring myself to care. Security let her out, and I had to spend the next hour performing damage control with my employer and coworkers. Fortunately, most of them understood, but I could tell some were wondering what kind of drama I was bringing into the office. But it was the fight with Mike that really threw everything off track. Last Saturday, I was in the gym, trying to let out some of my frustration on the punching bag. I was so into my training that I didn't notice someone approaching me until I heard his voice. I swung around and there was Mike, smirking at me as if he hadn't just broken the restraining order. He began speaking loudly enough for anyone surrounding to hear. I ordered him to go before I contacted the cops, but he laughed and said he'd tell them how I had threatened him and Sarah. That was when I lost it. I swiped at him, my first landing on his jaw. He stumbled backward before lunging at me. We ended up on the floor, trading blows like kids again. Except this time there were no parents to separate us, no one instructing me to be the larger person and let Mike win. I got in a few nice hits before the gym staff separated us. Mike's nose was bleeding, and I could feel my own swelling shut. We were both shrieking, trying to get free and get back at each other. The gym manager threatened to call the cops, which ultimately shook me out of it. I grabbed my belongings and fled. I was driving home, still shaking from adrenaline, when I received a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I responded. Sarah was shouting at me about how I had broken Mike's nose and that he could require surgery. I couldn't help laughing. The ridiculousness of her being upset with me after what they'd done was simply too much. I apologize if I had upset her little boyfriend, whom she had been sleeping with behind my back for several months. She began sobbing, complaining about how anxious she was, how the baby could detect her pain, and how I could be so selfish. I hung up and blocked her phone. The aftermath from the brawl was severe. The news had spread like wildfire throughout our social circle. My phone was flooded with texts from friends and family members, some supporting me, others calling me out for assaulting my poor defenseless brother. Sarah's parents contacted me again, expressing their support for me and their displeasure in their daughter. It was a minor consolation, but at this point, I'll take what I can. The restraining order does not seem adequate anymore. Mike has demonstrated his willingness to violate it, and I'm concerned about what he'll do next. The legal fallout has been a nightmare. My lawyer called me the day after the gym incident. Mike apparently filed assault accusations against me. I recounted what had happened, how Mike had violated the restraining order and provoked me. My lawyer groaned and said we'd fight it, but it might be a tough struggle considering that I threw the first punch. We are in the process of bringing our own charges against Mike for breaking the restraining order. My lawyer is convinced that this will benefit our case, but nothing is guaranteed. I've had to provide police statements, show them injuries on my face and knuckles, and justify defending myself against my own brother, which is humiliating. Mike and I have been banned from the gym for life. I can't blame them, but it's unfortunate that the gym was one of the few places where I felt like I could let out some of my frustration in a healthy manner. My cousin Amy, whom I've always been close to, called me the other day. She's taken a lot of pressure from her family for supporting me, but she's staying firm. She told me about what had been going on behind the scenes. Apparently, my parents have been telling everyone that I'm experiencing a mental breakdown. They claim that Sarah and Mike's relationship began after Sarah and I split up, and that I am simply envious and unable to let go. According to Amy, most of the family is skeptical, but some are. It's irritating to know that they're spreading false information about me while I'm attempting to recuperate. Things at work have been, to say the least, difficult. After the incident with my mother in the lobby and the argument with Mike, which went viral on local social media, I can sense my coworkers are on edge around me. My manager called me into his office earlier this week. He began by stating he valued me as an employee and realizes I'm going through a difficult period, but then he dropped the bombshell. He believes it would be best if I took a leave of absence until things calm down. He suggested we call it a personal sabbatical. Paid, of course. I wanted to fight, to tell him that work is the only thing keeping me sane right now, but I knew the choice had already been made. So I agreed, thanked him for his understanding and began to pack up my office. As I was leaving, I overheard two of my co-workers discussing how my brother got my fiancée pregnant. I slammed my office door louder than required as I exited, taking some little satisfaction in watching them jump. I'd be lying if I said none of this was impacting me. I've started taking long drives at night to get out of my flat. Sometimes I find myself parked outside my former place, the one I lived with Sarah, wondering how my life got so messed up. In the midst of this commotion, I received support from an unexpected source. Sarah's younger sister, Emma. Emma contacted me on social media, apologizing for her sister's conduct and giving her support. At first, I was skeptical. What if this was a trick? But after speaking with her, I realized she is equally disgusted by Sarah's behavior as I am. She's been telling me about what's going on in Sarah and Mike's lives. They appear to have moved in together, living as if they hadn't just destroyed numerous lives to be together. Emma claims Sarah has been attempting to portray herself as the victim, crying to anybody who would listen about how she never intended to hurt anyone and how she and Mike are soulmates who found each other against all odds. It makes me sick to my stomach, but I appreciate Emma keeping me in the loop. After all, information is power, even if it is knowledge that I would prefer not to have. The social media environment has been a nightmare. I've always been a rather private person, but this event has thrown me into the unwanted spotlight. Someone, probably one of Mike's friends, posted about our gym feud on a local Facebook page. The post did not mention our names, but it described the incident in enough detail for anyone who knows us to figure it out. The comment area became a battleground. Some individuals defended me, claiming Mike received what he deserved. Others described me as unstable and said I needed to be locked up. I made the mistake of looking over some of the comments one night after having too many beers. A huge mistake. I ended up hurling my phone across the room so hard that the screen cracked. Since then, I've canceled most of my social media profiles. I can't deal with the continuous notifications and messages from folks I haven't spoken to in years who suddenly want to know all the juicy details about my personal life. With everything that has happened, I have realized that I cannot stay in this city any longer. There are too many memories and chances to run into Sarah, Mike, or my parents. I've started looking for internal moves, and there's a promising opportunity in our Seattle office. It's not ideal. I've never been a fan of continual rain, but at this point, I'd move to the moon to avoid all of this turmoil. I haven't made any final decisions yet, but the concept of a fresh start is becoming increasingly intriguing. New city, new apartment, new life, where no one recognizes me as the guy whose brother cheated on his fiancée. My folks have been unusually silent since the restraining order was granted. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, for them to figure out a new method to force their way back into my life. Sarah has been spreading the word about her pregnancy far and wide. Emma tells me she's been posting continuous updates on social media, ultrasound photographs, belly shots and so on, with a message about how blessed she and Mike are and how thrilled they are to start their family. Each new piece of information feels like a fresh wound, triggering the pain just as I thought I was beginning to recover. So that is where things stand right now. 2 weeks ago, I believed my life couldn't possibly get any worse, yet it has. I'm still angry and wounded, but also weary. I am tired of justifying myself. So Reddit, I suppose this is less of an update and more of, I'm not sure, a cry into the void. I'm not sure what I'm asking for right now. Advice, pity, or a time machine that allows me to never introduce Sarah to my brother? Whatever happens next, I will attempt to keep you all informed. Your encouragement has meant more to me than you can realize. It's nice to be reminded that there are still good individuals in the world, even when it feels like everything is full of betrayal and deceit. Final update. Hello Reddit. It's been a week since my previous update, and I'm here with what I expect to be my final post on this whole disaster. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone for their help and guidance throughout this journey. Your writings have been a lifeline in the worst times of my life. So where to start? A lot has happened in just 7 days, and I'm still trying to digest everything. I guess I'll start with the major news. I'm relocating. Yes, I took the risk and accepted a transfer to our Seattle office. It was not an easy decision, but after everything that had happened, I felt I needed a new start. The choice came following an especially difficult day last week. I'd just returned from another meeting with my lawyer regarding Mike's assault allegations when I saw a note in my mailbox. It came from Sarah. I almost tossed it out before opening it, but curiosity got the best of me. Inside, there was an ultrasound image and a handwritten letter stating how pleased she and Mike were about their baby. She went on to say that she hoped I could find it in my heart to be pleased for them, and that the baby would be delighted to have its uncle in its life. I saw red. Before I realized it, I'd grabbed my phone, unblocked Sarah, and dialed her number. She picked up on the second ring and I simply let go. I informed her exactly how I felt about her, Mike, and their beautiful little family. I told her she was insane if she believed I'd ever want to do anything with that kid, and that she, Mike, and the baby could all go to hell. It wasn't my best moment, but I felt like I finally shouted everything I'd been keeping back. That's when I realized I couldn't stay in this city anymore. That same night, I called my supervisor and informed him that I wanted to transfer to Seattle. He was relieved, to be honest. I believe he was concerned about how all of this drama would affect the company. He promised to expedite the papers, and by the next morning it was official. I had 2 weeks to collect my belongings and relocate across the nation. My family and social circle were quick to learn about my move. My folks, unsurprisingly, were outraged. They turned up at my place unexpectedly, again breaking the restraining order, to try to talk me out of it. My mother was crying, accusing me of abandoning the family, and my father was furious, yelling at me for being selfish and immature. I didn't participate. I simply phoned the police and had them removed for breaking the restraining order. As they were let out, my mother yelled at me that I would regret it, that family was everything and that I was wasting it. I immediately closed the door and returned to packing. Mike reacted differently. He didn't try to contact me directly, most likely due to the current legal difficulties, but he did write a lengthy message on social media about how some people can't handle seeing others happy, and how he and Sarah were rising above the hate to focus on their new family. It was definitely intended for me, as he attempted to portray himself as the victim. I'll confess it stung to see how many people liked and commented in his favor, but I reminded myself that their opinion is meaningless because they don't know the truth. Sarah's response was the most startling. After our phone talk, she contacted her sister, Emma, who had been keeping me updated on Sarah and Mike's situation, as you may recall. Apparently, my statements had a greater impact than I had imagined. Emma informed me that Sarah had broken down, stating that she realized what she and Mike had done was terrible and was scared of the future. My cousin Amy, bless her, offered to help me pack. She even informed me more about what's going on with the family. Amy told me that my aunt, my mother's sister, had a heated argument with my mother, accusing her of always favoring Mike and pushing me away. My aunt complained that my parents were reaping the consequences of their years of favoritism. I can't say I'm not relieved to hear that someone is finally calling them out for their behavior. My lawyer assures me that my move will have no effect on the legal case, which is currently pending. We're still pursuing charges against Mike for breaching the restraining order and defending the assault accusations he brought against me. My lawyer seems certain that the judge will see through Mike's arguments, particularly considering his history of breaching the restraining order. The fact that I'm going across the nation should also show that I'm not a threat to Mike, which may help get his charges dropped. I don't know if I'll post any further updates after this. Part of starting over is putting the past behind, and as helpful as this group has been, I believe it is time for me to move on from revisiting this narrative. I need to focus on creating my new life rather than obsessing on the past. So I believe this is my final update. Wish me luck, Reddit. I've got a whole new life ahead of me in Seattle, and I intend to make the most of it. Thank you so much for staying till the end. If you enjoy our videos, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Have a good day. I caught my wife cheating with her old fling on a hike. It turns out she and her friends had been using him as a surrogate joystick. I, Ali, 38, am currently on a camping hiking trip with my wife Liv, 36, and 3 other married couples, Dom and Kate, Sean and Sarah, Bill and Miranda, as well as Liv's longtime friend Ian, 38, and his boyfriend OD, whose real name is Orlando, and no, he was not named after the dog from Garfield. We're all in our mid-30s to early 40s and enjoy spending time outside. We've been wanting to go on this hike for a while. We camp at night and walk throughout the daytime. Everything was great until early evening on the 3rd day of our 8-day journey. We stopped to camp and my wife and I decided to explore the surroundings. We discovered a little waterfall feeding into a creek that followed the trail we had been trekking. It was roughly 5 feet tall and flowed largely onto rocky rocks below. My wife stated that she wanted to rinse off in the stream and waterfall but did not want to soak her clothes. I urged her to go for it because we weren't far from the others and the location was secluded enough. I responded, "If you make it quick you could be in and out in no time." She did exactly that, lingered for a moment before stepping out and air drying with a tiny towel. Ian arrived unexpectedly from behind some trees after she had quickly put her shorts and panties back on. My wife was still topless. Here's where everything got weird. Neither of them responded. She proceeded to dress casually, and Ian approached as if he had seen her naked 100 times before. He told us that Dom wanted us to know something, but I can't remember what. My wife and Ian exchanged small talk before we all headed back to camp. It is now day 5. The hiking track leads to a small town, where we want to spend the night at a local inn to rest, resupply supplies and recover. For the past 2 days, I've been thinking about what happened at the waterfall. I tried to keep my thoughts hidden, but my wife questioned me this morning why I was so quiet yesterday. I told her I was weary, but in reality, I can't stop thinking about something that happened between her and Ian previously. I would normally be less skeptical, but I know Ian is not gay. I've known him for around 8 years and consider him a friend. We husbands and OD are the outliers in this group, as the 4 wives and Ian have been buddies since college. I've asked my wife before if she's ever dated Ian, and she's always responded no. I also inquired if Ian and any of the other ladies in the group had ever been in a relationship, and she denied that too. I might be delusional, but their relationship felt too similar, especially since she was still topless. My wife is usually very conservative about her body, so her lack of reaction to Ian's presence struck me as odd. I have no tangible reason to believe anything is wrong, but I can't shake the sensation that there's more to their history than friendship. Am I being paranoid, or is this a red flag? I am really trying not to leap to conclusions. Update 1. It's early morning on day 6 and I wanted to give you all an update. I told my wife Liv about what happened at the waterfall. I wanted to talk to her while we still had some privacy before heading back out on the trail, and I'm glad I did. I started as non-confrontational as possible, simply remarking that it seemed strange that she wasn't concerned by Ian's presence despite the fact that she was topless. If she had responded in any other way, I would have dropped it, but she became really defensive immediately. Is this why you've been moody? It's not a huge deal. Everyone has seen breasts before, including Ian. You have to grow up. This truly alarmed me. She rarely reacts forcefully until she feels bad about something. I probed harder and she grew more reactionary and defensive, attempting to deflect and belittle every question I posed, with a dash of gaslighting thrown in. I finally had enough and told her, either tell me what's going on or I'm going to confront Ian, who you know won't lie. This is when Liv revealed that she and Ian had a previous sexual relationship. I became enraged and demanded to know why she lied to me after I had previously asked her about it. She claimed she did not lie. They never dated. It was simply an FWB, friends with benefits situation before we became formal. I asked her, startled and agitated, so you were sleeping with him when we first started dating? She retorted, you don't have to be so vulgar. I don't want to discuss this right now. Can't we have this conversation when the trip is over? I said, absolutely not. Either you tell me everything now, or I'll start interrogating your pals. I believe she saw how serious I was and decided to reveal the whole truth. The first part I already knew. She had a string of bad relationships and dating encounters. Liv ascribed a large portion of this to not getting to know the other person before leaping into bed with them. When we started dating, she asked if we could take it slow. I accepted since I was also seeking for something unique and I was extremely intrigued in Liv. She said I could date others until we chose to be official, but I told her I didn't want to date around and preferred to focus on one relationship at a time. She stated it made her really happy. Then she divulged something that would shock everyone if it became public. Liv, Kate, Miranda, and Sarah all had comparable FWB situations with Ian while dating their current husbands. Kate, who is now married to Dom, became fed up with dating the wrong guys shortly after graduation. During this time, she and Ian became FWB. When she met Dom, she urged that they take it slow and get to know each other before becoming intimate. Kate stated it was simple because she was still sleeping with Ian, meeting her sexual needs while focusing on the emotional part with Dom. Ian was happy with the arrangement, assuring her that it was all about finding her special someone. They would talk about Dom and sleep together, and when Kate realized she had found the one, they ended the FWB arrangement and she began her sexual relationship with Dom. They eventually got married. Kate later informed the other women about their agreement. Throughout the years, they each used Ian as a surrogate while looking for the one. I'm only the most current individual involved in this circumstance. I asked Liv to explain her role. The other women's marriages are their own business, but I was curious how this worked out for her. She informed me that after her former lover had too many narcissistic characteristics, she had had enough and wanted to meet a good guy, which I suppose was me. She asked Ian to help her in the same manner he had helped the other three. Ian agreed, explaining that the whole affair was about finding her a life partner. I feel he was sincere in everything. He's a free-spirited type of person. I've had serious chats with Ian, and he's the type of person that will help anyone with anything. We play golf together and he has been in my life since I began dating Liv. I didn't realize he was so involved. Essentially, he would listen, offer counsel, and talk through her emotions so she could wait until she felt comfortable with me. I felt like throwing up. It feels like the entire relationship was a lie. Despite this, I continued to seek answers. I asked when she quit seeing Ian. She claimed it was when we became official. I told her that I thought we were formal when we agreed to date, so I asked her when she considered us official. She explained, dating does not constitute two people as a couple. When you asked me to commit and we had our first intercourse, we were official. She stated that she and Ian had been strictly platonic since that night. I mentioned, that was 7 months into dating. So you've been sleeping with him for 7 months? She became silent and I knew the answer. I said, let me be clear, I would pick you up for a date and we would go out and have a great time, holding hands, cuddling, kissing and making out. Then I'd drop you off and you'd meet Ian, sleep with him and brag about what a terrific person I am? She retorted, don't make it sound so dirty. I was appalled. I wanted to run but we were in the middle of nowhere and there was no way out except to keep walking forward. In retrospect, I wish I had just left, but instead I probed for more information. I inquired, when you say you slept together, do you mean you used him just to get yourself off, or do you mean you did all the positions, foreplay and kinky things that we do? She became very silent again. I gently stated, you must answer my questions. I need to know, and I will find out, whether it is from you or one of them. With that, I motioned towards the other rooms. She answered slowly, all of it, maybe even more than with you. The room began spinning, but I asked the dreaded question, when? When was the last time? She said, the night before our first time together. I'd never wanted to leave someone more than I did at that moment, yet all I could do was sit there in shock. She attempted to console me, but I ordered her to stay away. I needed time. With nowhere else to go, I gathered some blankets and pillows and slept on the floor at the foot of the bed. I passed out for a few hours, but I'm now up and making this update. I want to march out of here, but there's a 12-passenger van at the end of the route that I don't have the keys for. I'll have to stay with these people for another 2.5 days, with another half-day travel back. I do not know what to do. Part of me can understand the reasoning, but largely I'm heartbroken and believe our entire relationship was a scam. I feel like a silver medalist, not a champion. I also have an intense need to share everything with everyone, because all of these other guys are in the same circumstance. We are all here on false pretenses. I do not know what to do. I have about 1 hour till everyone gets up and then I'll have to face Ian and my wife. Am I overreacting? Is this marriage worth saving? I do not see how we can go back. Update 2. I'm back in the comfort of my own house. Unfortunately, I and several others may be facing divorce. I was able to keep it together for the majority of day 6, but I'm sure everyone could tell something was up with me. I remained quiet and pushed myself to get back to the van. I guess Liv grabbed Ian aside about lunchtime and told him what I knew. After that, Ian began attempting to buddy up with me and converse, despite my request that he leave me alone. He persisted a couple more times before I snapped and told him to stop it in a very strong manner. Liv intervened, and they both took the hint. I needed more time to process. The next 24 hours went relatively smoothly. Everyone just kind of left me alone. However, after snapping at Ian, his temperament altered dramatically. He shifted from his customary laid-back demeanor to becoming slightly distant with everyone. He would occasionally make subtle passive-aggressive remarks, nothing too explicit, but clearly intended at me. By the 7th night, we had set up camp, and I had relaxed a little, being more friendly with everyone. We were sitting around the campfire, finishing up the last of our meals. People were conversing, joking and sharing stories. Billy told a long embarrassing story from high school. It was a very humorous story about him and his first girlfriend, and he acted like an idiot. When he was done, he said something like, "I still can't believe I was ever that dumb. I still cringe just thinking about it." Ian responded, "Well, at least you grew up. Some people never grow up and overcome their past." He then stared at me with the most disdainful expression. In that time, I experienced an out-of-body experience and saw only crimson. The filter was gone and logic was out the window. It was on. "You know, Ian, you are right. Sometimes we just have to face the past head on." Liv attempted to interrupt, but I disregarded her totally. "How about we address the fact that you used to have **** all our wives while we were dating?" When I stated it, even the insects were quiet. "Oh fellas, didn't you know either?" "Yeah, while they were holding out on us to make a connection," I air quoted, "our future spouses were using Ian here as their human dildo." Dom and Billy seemed perplexed and angry. Sean had a look on his face like he'd just walked in on his grandmother fapping, complete train disaster astonishment. But I wasn't finished. I turned to Dom. It was Kate who devised this incredible strategy. She realized that the secret to developing a long-term relationship was to take things slowly and get to know each other before getting into bed. All you need to deal with the impulses is a best friend who will blow your back out when you get home from your dates all hot and bothered. Dom jumped in at this time. "K.U. Ali. How do you know this?" "Oh, I just found out 2 days ago that when I took Liv out for drinks, that wasn't going to be the only thing she was swallowing that night." At this time, Liv lost control and began yelling at me. "Why the F*** are you doing this? You don't have to." However, she was cut short when Sean stood up. "It is true. It is entirely true." Everyone fell silent and glanced at him. "I have known since we were dating. I didn't realize it was also true for everyone else until after we got married. I apologize, Billy. I swear I didn't realize it was you too back then." Billy's expression was one of dread. "Sean, we used to have double dates with Miranda and Sarah. We went out several times and then dropped them off at Ian's. Does that imply they—" Sean simply stared at him and nodded. I quickly turned to Ian. "Two at once, you hound dog." Then in a fit of bravery, I howled like a wolf. Which in retrospect is pretty terrible, but at the time, I thought it was funny. Arguments broke out among the couples all around us, but an audible gasp and whimper caught everyone's attention. OD sat there, tears spilling down his face. He looked at Ian and said, "Lies. More lies. It never ends. You always do this to me, no matter how much I forgive or how many times I return your affection." He then slapped Ian and bolted down the trail. Ian ran after him. The other 3 couples mumbled under their breath at each other, then began walking away in different directions. I stood beside the fire, feeling triumphant. Liv approached me and said, "I hope you're happy." I looked her in the eyes and replied, "I've never been more happy with myself in my whole life. I'm currently 80/20ths on obtaining a divorce." I suggested we postpone any major debates until we were home, unpacked, showered and nourished, because the only thing she would achieve before then is push me to my limits. At that instant, she turned and entered our tent. The following day was the most embarrassing 7 hours of my life. Between the morning pack-up, the hike to the van, loading up and the 4.5-hour journey home, only around 19 words were spoken. Now I'm sitting in my bathroom, newly showered. I'm going to eat some chicken nuggets, drink 3 Dr. Peppers and then converse with my wife. I'm not sure where we're headed from here, or where anyone else will wind up, but I know it won't be pretty regardless. Update 3. It's been 4 weeks since we returned from our trip and everything seems to have crumbled. Dom and Kate are getting divorced. They have been together the longest of the couples and have a 10-year-old son. Dom took the revelation quite hard. In addition to being together the longest, they also had the longest courtship period, 9 months. It's been a difficult pill for him to chew because he remembers they didn't truly got intimate until he began to wonder if he wanted to stay in the relationship. Now that he knows the truth, no matter what Kate says, he will always believe the delay was due to her desire to continue being with Ian. I sat down with Sean and had a couple beers one night. Despite the fact that we just met through our wives, we've been very close friends over the years. Sean stated that Sarah was straightforward with him when they began dating. She informed him she intended to wait at least 3 months before having sex, but that she would still meet with her FWB. Sean liked her but told her he was simply casually dating until he knew for sure, which Sarah was fine with. So, unlike the rest of us, Sean had a clear decision. Sean discovered he was falling for Sarah 2 weeks before the 3-month period ended, following a few double dates with Billy and Miranda. He informed her he wanted to be exclusive. She broke the 3-month limit and they became intimate that night and haven't looked back. Both were completely honest about their adventures at this time, and it appears that their candor paid off handsomely. Sean informed me they had a brief dispute after the campfire incident because Sarah felt they should have excused themselves rather than getting involved, but they are doing well as a couple overall. I've also got an update on Billy and Miranda. They are in the initial stages of reconciliation. Billy is clearly and understandably struggling. He believes she cheated and uses words to excuse it. They dated for 6 months before getting married, and they have 3 children under the age of 7, so they both believe they must try to make it work for the kids. Billy's toughest challenge is recalling dropping both Miranda and Sarah at Ian's on 2 consecutive occasions, knowing she had a threesome arranged. It reduced him to a shell of his former self. Miranda appears to have attempted to explain that they only did something on one of those nights, and it was more akin to a reverse train than a full threesome. Once again, semantics are used as an excuse. Sean assures me Miranda is speaking the truth, because Sarah was the second party and acknowledged it wasn't a true 3-way. But honestly, does it matter? Ian reached out to apologize. I told him to F*** himself, then blocked him. OD also reached out. I guess my revelation was the final straw for him. We have actually talked quite a bit over the last few weeks. We actually talked a lot over the course of a week, despite the fact that we had previously merely been cordial acquaintances. It turns out that Ian and OD had been on and off for 15 years. Ian presents a laid-back, selfless appearance to everyone else, but OD knows him to be incredibly self-centered and manipulative. Ian frequently breaks up with OD for brief periods of time or claims they are on a break so he can do whatever he wants without being labeled a cheater, only to return once he has had his pleasure. Looking back, OD sees that at least 2 of these breaks occurred during these dating situations. However, OD is the most upset since he has tolerated it for so long and has given Ian numerous opportunities. He says this was the final straw. He's returning to Santa Barbara and leaving Ian and the cold, nasty Midwest behind for good. Despite our exhaustion after the hike, Liv and I had the longest chat. I informed her right away that I was not interested in arguing, disputing, or anything like that. I said, "Tell me everything you want to tell me. I will not interrupt or ask questions until you finish. Then I demand the exact same courtesy." She agreed. Her letter was filled with apologies and explanations. She would admit it was wrong, then explain why it was okay or point to a positive conclusion. She expressed her disappointment and hurt with how I behaved at the campsite, but she also realized that Ian deserved equal culpability for poking the bear. When she finished, she asked if I had any questions. I replied, "No." And then I began. I informed her that our entire relationship is based on false pretenses. I can see where you were coming from and why you tried the entire FWB thing. Your 3 best friends did it and scored excellent husbands before you. But on some level, all 4 of you had to understand that starting a relationship like this was wrong. It was tremendously distressing to learn that you were sleeping with someone else while we were getting to know each other, and I believe it impeded the natural progression of our relationship. I added, it has significantly altered my memory of our early days together. Do you remember that fantastic day we had approximately 4 or 4.5 months into our relationship? We spent the day together. It finished with us back on my couch, kissing, your shirt off, and me caressing you over your shorts. It was getting quite hot. You paused and apologized, stating you wanted to but weren't quite ready. You needed to be absolutely certain. I assured you that everything would be fine, and you gazed at me affectionately, kissed me passionately, and then departed. I stopped before saying, "I can only guess you left my place and went to Ian's." As she nodded, Tears streamed down her face. I said, I invested that energy in you. You chose to give it to someone else rather than returning it to me. I might have been able to get over this if it had ended in the first or second month, when we were more relaxed. But after that, we spent a lot of time together and you maintained your relationship with him until the day before we became official. You enjoyed having us both. You did whatever mental gymnastics were required to justify it to yourself. I told her, you may not realize it, but this last portion is the toughest part of it all for me. Learning that you were far more adventurous and exciting with him is like a dagger to the heart. It makes me feel like I'm second best, like I'm the retirement plan you choose, just good enough. She interjected saying, no, not like that, I love you. He was only having sex, it was not real. That's how it is when they don't matter. It's simpler to be free and wild then. And so on. I waited for her to finish before saying, remember, we agreed it was my turn to talk. Afterward I remarked, I see your point of view, but it is not mine. As your husband, I believe it is my responsibility to give you my full energy, emotional, physical, cerebral, and sensual. I believe I have accomplished this during the past 8 years. I believe you have given me your best in some areas, but I now see I have not received your best in others. And as a male, I have to acknowledge that sensuous energy is really essential to me. The fact that you did not trust me with all of your sensual energy was the determining factor. I do not think I can recover from this, and I want to file for divorce. The scene became chaotic from there. She started crying hard, asking, giving herself and pleading with me to start over. I eventually removed myself from the situation. Later, she mentioned that we were just in an emotional state right now and that I needed to give it some time. This gave me pause, and I agreed to her terms of 3 weeks. As I previously stated, it has been 4 years, and my feelings have been consistent. We met with a joint divorce lawyer, who will represent both of us. There are no children involved and we both want to sell the house, so the initial meeting went smoothly. She has been tremendously depressed, as have I, but this is for the best. Sometimes things simply don't work out. Thank you very much. My family abandoned me because my sister blamed me for her divorce. I ruined her life years later with an email that revealed everything. Almost 7 years ago, my family removed me from their lives and kicked me out of the house. I, 29M, was 22 at the time and lacked the financial stability to rent an apartment on my own. What had transpired was so unexpected that I had no time to prepare, either psychologically or financially. My sister was the cause of all of this. My sister, Hannah, 37F, and I have never been close due to our huge age difference. She married her partner of 3 years, Pete, 39M, when she was 27 and they were married for 3 years. They divorced after 3 years of marriage because Hannah suspected Pete of having an affair with one of my friends. I had been living with my parents after college because I had recently begun working and wanted to save money before moving out. My parents were fine with the arrangement as well, until my sister announced her divorce. She returned home one day, crying uncontrollably, and stated that she had filed for divorce because her husband had been cheating on her for 6 months. Then she threw me under the bus for introducing my friend to him. My friend Emily, 28F, was attempting to gain weight, and Pete, who was a licensed dietitian, volunteered to help her. I had introduced her to him, and it turned out she was the one Pete had been cheating on my sister with. I was startled that this was occurring because, while Emily and I were not particularly close, I thought she was a decent lady who would never become involved with a married man. Furthermore, dishonesty was out of character for Pete as well. He was completely charmed with Hannah and only had positive things to say about her, so I found it quite difficult to think he cheated on her. I had serious reservations, but my parents immediately trusted her and did not question anything, despite the fact that she had no evidence of him cheating. They simply accepted her word for it. I'm not going to hold it against them since they would prefer their own daughter over their son-in-law regardless of who was correct. What I didn't understand was why they so quickly kicked me out simply because Hannah said so. She stormed in one day, had a tantrum, and persuaded my parents to kick me out merely because I had introduced Emily to Pete. She blamed me for destroying her marriage, and my parents agreed for some reason. I was upset and tried to stop my parents, but they refused to listen. They warned me that if I didn't leave, they would kick me out. In only one day, I had lost both my family and my home and had no idea where to go. I was sobbing on the pavement with all my belongings for about an hour before I was able to gather myself and go to a friend's house for the night. I tried phoning them every day for the next 2 days but had no success. My friend was gracious enough to let me stay at his house until I could find an apartment for myself. Unfortunately, my parents were convinced that I was in the wrong and was to blame for the divorce. My parents had actually told me that they were disgusted by what I'd done before kicking me out, which made no sense given I wasn't the one Pete cheated on. They had blocked my number, so I couldn't reach them at all. When I attempted to visit them, my mother threatened to call the cops if I did not leave. After that, I concluded they were serious and blamed me for whatever had transpired. I don't suppose I had any reason to be surprised, given that my sister was always the favorite child. My parents had never intended for a second child, so I was constantly sidelined. While I didn't care for it growing up, I had no idea it would lead to something so significant. Thinking about it now, I suppose I should have seen it coming, but honestly, I don't think anyone in my position could have anticipated something like this. Anyway, for the following few weeks, I tried to figure things out on my own. Since Hannah and my parents had effectively cut me off and I had no way to contact them, I couldn't chat with Pete since he had also blocked me, which made no sense to me. I couldn't find him either because Hannah and Pete had moved out of the house they shared and gone to live with their separate parents. So, with no way to contact anyone involved, I turned to Emily, my last choice for finding out the truth. As I previously stated, Emily and I were not very close, but I had to do what was necessary. I asked to meet with her one day and explain the problem. I questioned her if Hannah's claims about the affair were accurate and she flatly denied it. To be really honest, I believed her. Emily told me that she'd only seen Pete a few times, and just professionally, so there was nothing going on between them. She had no understanding why Hannah would say such nasty things about her. She even told me she'd had a stable partner for a couple of years and was planning to marry in a few months. She even showed me photos. What Emily told me was far more believable than anything Hannah stated. I had no proof, but I knew Hannah was lying about the real cause for the divorce. However, because I lacked proof, I was unable to return to my family, and I could not have returned without it. Back then, I was yearning to return to my family because I missed them so much, despite all they had done to me. With time, I was able to overcome it and move on with my life. I found a place and made my employment the focus of my life so that I could distract myself. I also needed to pay the bills, so it was a better way to cope than sitting around feeling unhappy. I was hurting a lot because I didn't have any other options, but I knew I had to keep on, with or without the support of my family. Years have passed and I am doing a lot better in life. I relocated from my small apartment to a much larger one, and I even proposed to my girlfriend of 2 years about a week ago. Our engagement post proved to be a game changer for me. Just a few days after that post, I received an email out of nowhere that not only revealed the full tale of Hannah's divorce, but also provided all of the answers I needed, along with documentation. My fiancée, Liza, 30F, normally just posted about us on Instagram, but the photo from our engagement ended up on her Facebook feed, where she had a larger audience. It was a public post, so a lot of people saw it, including my ex-brother-in-law Peter. He happened to be someone my fiancée met at a conference a few years ago, since she was a doctor, and she ended up joining him on Facebook, where he found me. It truly is a tiny world, and for the first time, I felt pleased with it. Pete contacted me a few days after we posted, but instead of texting me on social media, he chose to send an anonymous email. He subsequently claimed that he did this so he wouldn't feel strange about what he was doing, as it had been several years since his divorce, and he didn't want to appear like a disgruntled loser who hadn't moved on from what happened. Besides, he was the one who blocked me in the first place. So he felt strange and guilty about getting back in touch with me about something that happened so many years ago. The email contained the entire tale and documentation of what happened 7 years ago. When I finished reading it, I couldn't believe my eyes. Apparently, my sister was the one cheating on Pete, not the other way around, as she had been telling us for so long. Not only was that a massive lie, but she had been cheating on Pete with a friend of mine, just as she had accused him of. My friend Frank, 28M, worked as a clerk at a grocery store near Hannah's house back then. I would never have noticed the connection myself because I had never seen them together. I suppose they had kept it sufficiently under wraps, but not enough for Pete to find out. When questioned, Hannah told Pete that it was all my fault because I had introduced her to Frank and even told her how much he needed her help because he was an aspiring singer and she was a really excellent singer herself. She agreed to help him, and they were in love before they realized it. She even admitted that I was involved and had helped them keep things quiet for so long. All of this was obviously a fabrication, and I had no idea Frank and Hannah were up to anything. Pete was enraged when he found out and blocked my entire family, which he now admits was idiotic of him. However, he was so enraged that he didn't think much about his conduct. Of course, he told me all of this in person because the email was designed to be as impersonal as possible. He did not want it traced back to him, but I figured it out. He had provided copies of emails between my sister and Frank in which they discussed how easy it was to dupe Pete. The emails were filled with declarations of love and plans for where they would meet next. Hannah couldn't refute any of this because she signed off on the emails with her middle name, which few people were aware of. I had her dead to rights. After combing through Liza's Facebook friends, I concluded that Pete must have sent me the email. My gut intuition told me that it had to do with social networking. When I eventually discovered Pete on her friend list, I contacted him. We planned to meet a few days ago, and he informed me that he learned about what Hannah had told her family from Emily, who had met him a few years before. I had told Emily to keep my side of the story a secret, and I was cursing myself when I realized that if I hadn't said that, she would have informed Pete about it, and I would have been able to prove my innocence a long time ago. Anyway, Emily and Pete ran into one another a few years ago, and she ended up questioning him about their divorce. They started conversing and he eventually learned what Hannah had told us. He said that he wanted to speak with me about it and tell me the truth. But he didn't because he felt strange. I swear, if Pete hadn't been so easily embarrassed, my life would have been much easier. I did forgive him though, since I needed his cooperation to completely destroy my sister, and I knew he would agree. Hannah had clearly been lying to my parents in order to secure financial assistance during her divorce, and she had even thrown me under the bus for good measure, knowing that one discussion with Emily would disclose the truth. I couldn't believe someone, particularly someone related to me by blood, could be so selfish. I'm sure Hannah never bothered to correct the record, and my parents had simply accepted whatever lies she'd been giving them during her divorce. She knew that if the truth about her being the cheater was out, she would be in serious danger, and she simply couldn't risk it. That's too bad. The truth had finally come out, and I was going to use it to ruin her life, just as she had ruined mine all those years before. I had not seen my family in 7 years, so I wasn't sure if they still lived in the same house, but they hadn't moved. I checked this with an old neighbor before arriving, and I was relieved to discover that Hannah was still living with them as well. That didn't surprise me because Hannah had always been a couch slug who loathed doing her own job. If she could live with our old parents and have them perform all of her duties, she would. Anyway, 2 days ago, Pete and I unexpectedly arrived at their place. My mother answered the door, and we hardly gave her time to process what was occurring before we walked in. My father and Hannah were also present in the living room. We were back together as one happy family, but only for a short time. Their faces turned nasty as soon as we entered. My father instantly threatened us, saying he'd call the cops if we didn't leave. But I shot back, telling him he could do whatever he wanted once he saw the documents we were about to show them. My parents looked perplexed, but Hannah looked like she was about to vomit and excused herself, heading to her room. I assumed she was trying to flee, but there was no use in doing so. Pete then proceeded to show my parents the divorce papers and screenshots of Hannah and Frank's correspondence, while I described the true story. Pete also told my parents that Hannah had to give up our family heirloom, my grandmother's diamond ring. In the settlement, she had to sell the ring because she couldn't afford to pay him the money. She is a high school teacher. My parents were already terrified by what we had told them, and this was simply the cherry on top. We watched the drama unfold as my father demanded an explanation from Hannah for all that had occurred. Despite all of the evidence against her, she continued to lie and cover up the truth, so my father kicked her out. He packed her belongings for her, handed her the bags and then told us all to leave their house. I didn't need to be told twice before leaving with Pete, as my sister cried and pleaded with my parents to let her back in, just like I did all those years ago. This was excellent karma, and I could not be happier. It's been a few days since then, and my sister just arrived at my house a few hours ago, insisting that I immediately make amends with my parents. I had no idea how she located me, but I informed her that I no longer owed her anything. She had ruined my life once, so I returned the favor and we were now equal. I swear she had no pride left because the moment I said that, she burst into tears and accused me of being a monster. I didn't care about her drama and closed the door as she began to sob uncontrollably. I just put on my headphones and listened to music as Liza, my fiancée, worked in her study, so that neither of us would be disturbed. Hannah eventually departed, but not before leaving a message with a marker on my door, reminding me that I was nothing more than a vengeful monster. To be honest, I see nothing wrong with what I did and have no regrets. But Hannah appears to believe that I am the villain here. I just did to her what she had done to me some years ago, only I told the truth, whereas she did nothing but lie and threw me under the bus. So what do you all think? Am I the hole who ruined my sister's life and got her kicked out 7 years after she accused me of causing her divorce? Update 1. Hannah is still troubling me, despite the fact that she was kicked out a week ago. I had to threaten her with calling the cops after she called me for the 14th time today before she stopped. I'm not sure how she found my phone number and address, but that's not what I'm interested in right now. Hannah is attempting to get sympathy from me since, apparently, a school teacher's salary is insufficient for her to support herself. But I don't think that's the case. She's just furious that she has to seek a home and pay her own rent, energy and groceries now that our parents have booted her out. I don't feel really sad for her. In case you were asking, yeah, I did block her phone multiple times, but I think she's having her pals add me to conference calls, so it's pointless. My parents are as awful, if not worse than Hannah. They found me on Facebook and saw the post announcing my engagement, so they want to be a part of my life again and have expressed a wish to attend my wedding. They have not apologized yet, but for some reason, they expect me to simply invite them to my wedding, which is meant to be a very special day for me. I don't know where these individuals get the courage to say things like this, but I'm not reacting to any of it. Liza and I have had a blast reading their texts because there's no chance they're genuine right now. It's all just very sad for them. Update 2. Hannah showed up at my house again after I threatened to report her for harassment yesterday. I was about to go for work, but she stopped me by flinging herself across the hood of my car and refusing to move until I spoke with her. It was really frustrating, so I ended up contacting the cops this time. They carried her away while she yelled and wept, attempting to paint me as the evil guy. But nobody believed her sad girl play. It took some time to file charges against her, but once I did, I left for work since I didn't want to let this minor incident spoil my day. I was confident that my parents would bail her out because she was their favorite, and I was proven correct. After getting her out, my parents texted me a lengthy message about how I was being far too harsh on them for an honest mistake they made nearly 10 years ago. It was comical since nothing about what my sister and dad subjected me to was either honest or incorrect. They knew exactly what they were doing and were fully aware of how nasty they were. Despite the fact that I had nowhere else to go, they nonetheless sent me out on the street. So now that I can do the same to them, I see no reason to be forgiving or compassionate. I texted my parents back, telling them that they had lost the right to tell me what I could and couldn't do years ago, so they should stop fooling themselves. I have not blocked them yet because I haven't had time to check my messages, but I will shortly. Hopefully, I'll be free of this entire family for good. Update 3. I just got home from work and checked my social media, only to discover that my folks had sent me yet another lengthy message. Liza and I went through it together, and I swear it was the funniest thing I had ever read. I suppose the poor people are unaware that nothing they say or do today will cause me any harm. I am just giggling at how delusional and sad they are. Apparently they still consider us to be family, and they have taken Hannah back in. They've decided that both of their children need a second chance, as if I've ever done anything wrong. So while they have welcomed my sister back in, they also expect me and Liza to come to their house shortly for dinner so that we may settle our disagreements civilly before the wedding. It was bold of them to think that I would want them at my wedding in the first place. We got a good laugh at their dumb message. After that, I wrote back, indicating I had no interest in anything they had asked us to. I was content living away from them, as I had for the previous 7 years. They had shown me that I was better off without them, and I would be eternally grateful for that. I didn't need them anymore, and I didn't want their supposed forgiveness. They may continue to play happy family with my sister as they had done so far. With that last text, I blocked them for good since I no longer wanted the chuckles. I was done, and I was leaving. I'm sure they'll try to contact me in some way soon, but unfortunately for them, I'm done with it. Liza is the only family I need for now, and I'm content with just her. Unfortunately, my dad and sister have never been able to think beyond themselves, and I doubt they ever will. So the next time they contact me, they will speak with my lawyer, and that is a commitment. Am I the asshole for losing it and calling my father a weak, pathetic man in front of his family? Original post, August 18, 2024. My father has always been against any confrontation or arguments. He is extremely passive, refuses to stand up for himself, and avoids any conflict. If someone isn't paying attention while walking and bumps into him, he insists it's his own fault. If his employer would mess up his salary, he wouldn't bother fixing it. If a mechanic didn't properly repair his car, he would just accept it as is. This unfortunately resulted in a tumultuous childhood with my insanely narcissistic mother. She controlled his every move. She got him to quit his job and be a locked-in stay-at-home dad. She had him do every chore. She insulted him at every step. She cheated on him relentlessly and even brought APs into our home. She enjoyed making his life miserable every day and he never questioned it. My extended family, God bless them, were there for me so many times as much as they could be. They tried for years to make my father leave but he never budged. When she would direct her anger onto myself, in the form of screaming, insulting or general demeaning, my father never once found the guts to stand up for me or support me. When I was a kid, if I cried to Dad about something Mom did or said to me, he would sweep it under the rug or just insist I forget about it. Hell, he would even try and justify it. As I grew older, it really set in for me how messed up this was. My mother gladly kicked me out of the house when I was 18 and my father just sat there and looked sullen. Didn't say a damn thing. I joined the Air Force almost immediately and got stationed on the other side of the country. The dynamic was awful and I could have easily gone down the incel route if not for therapy and the amazing people I met along the way. It took years for me to get in a better mental space. I was filled with hatred. My mother left my father 2 years after I got stationed and utterly destroyed my father in the divorce. She was killed a year later in a DUI with one of her APs. I took a lot of joy in hearing that it took her hours to die, and that's when I really knew I needed help to process things. I'm almost 30 now, have a girlfriend who is perhaps the best thing to ever happen in my life, and fully understands the situation with my family. I have learned to not allow myself to be consumed with anger and resentment by my past, or so I thought, you'll see. And instead put that energy to my future. I have been extraordinarily low contact / near no contact with my father since I left. As much as I try, I cannot make that connection with him. I recently went to a family reunion and brought my girlfriend with me. My father was there as it was his side of the family. They have many issues with him but he is family, so whatever, I guess. I made sure to avoid him. I was chatting with my uncles when I heard my father talk in the background. He was discussing how a co-worker of his was going through a divorce as he discovered his wife was having an affair, and was positioned to have a very favorable divorce on his side. My father remarked how his co-worker should work instead to forgive his wife and, by his own words, set a good example for unity and forgiveness. And how he believed he set a great example for me in that extent. I swear it was like a switch went off in my head and I was mentally back to being the rage-filled 18-year-old. All these years and he never learned a damn thing. I turned to him and asked if he was fucking serious. He looked at me and started to stutter. I know the next minute was pure word vomit and I can't relay it perfectly, but to sum it up I shouted how he was a pathetic father, pathetic man, his family all know he's a disgrace of a human being who would rather his son be treated like shit than defend him because he's a fucking coward. No one would ever see him as an example to live by. His wife would rather fuck half the neighborhood than even touch him, and he should never ever believe anyone respects him. I began to derail and ramble between my shouting and my girlfriend quickly took me out and drove me home. It was insane just how quickly being away from him made me feel better. She just held me when we got back and told me it's okay. Again, the best thing to ever happen to me. I was ashamed of how I lost it and am now going to resume my therapy, that's a given. However, I'm glad I finally unloaded what always needed to be said onto him. Extended family is pretty mixed with reactions. His brothers, my uncles, said it was time for him to hear it from me. My grandparents are pissed I did that in front of the entire extended family, with some saying I should have done that behind closed doors instead of everyone. AITA has no consensus bot, OOP was NTA with a few YTAs. Relevant comments. Comment 1. It sounds like you finally got to express the pent-up feelings you've carried for so long. While the outburst wasn't ideal, it seems like it was a necessary step towards healing. It's good you're resuming therapy to process this further. OOP. Yeah, afterwards it hit me that although it was very cathartic, it definitely wasn't the most appropriate way to handle it, LOL. Comment 2. He sounds like a gentle, kind and well-meaning person. You directed what is very clearly anger and resentment for your mother at him. It's a bit more complicated than being an asshole or not. You seem to have got some catharsis out of it. I just don't believe he is the one you really wanted to scream at, and from the sounds of it he was also a victim of your mother too. And while he was an adult and should have known better, he obviously didn't. Being non-confrontational isn't some character flaw. It's psychological. And he probably needs therapy himself. Screaming at him and demeaning him actually sounds like something your mother probably did/would do, and I worry about you if that is something that actually made you feel better about yourself. OOP. Yes, I fully admit he was a victim of my mother, but he was a victim who had a support system he never wanted to use. He fully let me be a victim my entire childhood because apparently it was too much effort to try, and to this day doesn't believe he needs therapy. Comment 3. All I can say is based on your post and this interaction is deeply misguided. And you're failing to recognize the truly horrifying thing. You're behaving like the mother you actually should hate. OOP. Oh, trust me, I fully hate her as well, but she is gone, and there is no use in holding a grudge against a dead person. I had hoped though, after his son making him an outsider in his life, his family openly joking face to face about his failings as a father, and his ex-wife draining him for everything he had and making him start over in a one-bedroom apartment, his friends slowly leaving his life one at a time out of embarrassment, that he would have maybe have at least one moment to reflect and maybe consider he should have done things differently. OOP getting therapy due to his past trauma. OOP. Yeah, either way, I need to hop back on the horse for therapy. It'll be good for me. As for my grandparents, I really have had to look back as to how far this pattern of enabling goes back. I know they all did what they could to try and help, but it always seemed like there were times that more active measures could be taken. Times where people should have been far more stern with his addressing his behavior. The older generation on his side are the classical "their family and we stick together no matter what." And I have to think whether his passiveness and enabling is something he picked up on his own or something he learned from his own parents. Update 1. August 20th, 2024, 2 days later. Thanks for the advice and recommendations, even amongst some of the YTA. However, some of them needed to be addressed because they were either hilarious or cringeworthy. Some of them were very angry, and they kind of confused me at first until I saw their comments further down or saw their profile and saw rants about double standards or complete non sequitur ramblings about women. So yeah, not helpful advice, and they were great dark reflections about how I could have turned out if not for the support in my life. Some attempted to portray my dad as a humble, kind, caring, sensitive old man who I'm just being a big bully to. This was a very good insight into how enablers of abuse get away with so much in today's world, because so many people forget how they are part of the abuse themselves. Some were attempting to mentally dissect me or have a gotcha moment with me to pull apart my story. That was generally asinine, and I had to step away from those before they asked for my cranial measurements or something. So it was pretty much immediately when I was up the next morning that I realized I needed to resolve the events of last night. I first spoke to my girlfriend and gave a sincere apology for having her see me like that. She reassured me that nothing was wrong. She'd known me for years and has always known me to be level-headed and understands why I kinda snapped. She herself has a history of dealing with narcissistic families, so she absolutely understands the dynamic. She only really told me that it would be best to work on spending time around my extended family since my father will always be there. I told her, don't worry, I'm immediately going to talk to them afterwards to figure that out. So those parts are fine. Looked kind of like an ass in front of her, but I'm making sure that doesn't happen again. I also informed her of my intentions to resume more therapy just to keep myself steady, which she was happy to hear. I called my grandparents and sincerely apologized as well for putting such a sore dent into their family reunion. That it wasn't appropriate, and while I still feel it felt good to say that to him, it should have been privately and not in front of everyone. I also told them that going forward, as much as I love spending time with them, since the family always hangs out in one group that my father will always be in, for now until I can handle being around him, I need to distance myself occasionally until I feel comfortable interacting. I told them that I am nor would I ever be establishing an ultimatum or demands of them, and that either way I need to step back. I guess during my apology and explanation I was kind of just going on a tangent because my grandfather interrupted me to calm down. He told me that after I left, people kind of separated or slowly started leaving, and they eventually were able to talk to my father one-on-one. I guess seeing me have such a freakout resulted in my grandmother having a mini freakout of her own when she started talking to my father, resulting in her kicking him out. While I have a great relationship with both, my grandmother has always been extra protective of me, so seeing me that way must have set off a fire in her. My grandfather then said that it has become a bit of an open family secret about my father's failing. His brothers taunt him about it and generally don't have a great relationship with him, and for my grandparents it's always just uneasy. But seeing me the other day and how it still affects me so much has really liked it for a lot of people that it was really bad. They began to try and say sorry if they didn't do enough, which I very adamantly retorted that they did more than what anyone could have expected. It was very emotional for a minute, but culminated in then telling me that they have decided to distance themselves from my father for the time being, and have given him the ultimatum that unless he has a deep introspective and regularly goes to therapy, that distance may become permanent. My extended family, I've been told, are going to try and reach out or call or whatever, but I asked them if they could relay to them that it's not necessary, and that I'm fine and am sorry to them as well for ruining the day, which again, they told me I shouldn't apologize for being hurt. Since then, extended family have sent some messages with the general consensus that it's okay, with some older members complaining about my lack of respect towards my father. And finally, I texted my father hoping to meet at a local coffee shop and have a final talk. I met him and he didn't look good. I think his parents tearing into him finally got the message through. I had so many things I could have said, but I instead asked him first thing if the coworker he gave the advice to took it well. He just said that neither him nor several coworkers interact with him anymore. I asked him if he truly 100% believes that every single thing he did for me as a child was for my benefit. He didn't really say anything. I then finally asked if he has any regrets for how I was treated as a child, and if he thinks he ever did anything wrong. He looked utterly defeated and just mumbled that he could have done more. I could have poked and prodded and could have gone on another rant, but instead I told him this should be goodbye and I hope he gets the help he needs. I think finally unloading my frustrations was what I needed to finally be able to move on and find peace. I absolutely need to keep on track for therapy and admit that a public bitching moment isn't okay, but I should be fine. Comments. Comment 1. This is an interesting one. The ability to control one's failures, yes, that's what I'll call your situation, is very powerful. You'll do all right. Comment 2. Congratulations sincerely on owning your actions. No matter how justified, you acknowledged your outburst was uncomfortable for others and likely not appropriate in that setting. It takes incredible strength of character to admit your failings even if you have no idea how else you could have reacted in that moment. That you immediately communicated that to your loved ones is a huge sign of how respectable and genuine you are as a person. I really hope you keep moving forward from this situation with the same mindset. Good luck. Comment 3, NTA. It sounds like you handled things well after what happened. You took responsibility by apologizing to your girlfriend and family, and it's clear you're committed to moving forward by focusing on therapy and healing. It's understandable that you snapped given everything you've been through. It's also clear that your outburst made your family realize the impact your dad's behavior had on you. Don't beat yourself up over it. You've done what you needed to do to move on, and it seems like you're on the right track now. Update 2, September 12, 2024. 3 weeks later. Things have progressed over the last couple weeks and I now have a broader context about my family. Long story short is, there was a lot hidden from me. My father was an absolute asshole to his family, and that's why they treat him the way they do. I got a lot of feedback including the compilation posts on Best of Redditor updates and Boru, and one thing that stood out was people questioning if my extended family could have contributed to the abuse and that's why he was so feeble. And since I was trying to work on my relationship with my family, I figured it was time to ask the hard questions before going that far. I met with my dad's brothers who invited me out to a popular lunch spot. For context and clarity. Dale is the oldest brother. He is married and has a daughter and a son. My father is the second oldest, self-explanatory. John is the second youngest, also married with a son. Bill is the youngest, married with 3 daughters. So anyways, we met up and I ripped the band-aid off asking about my father growing up, what he was like beyond the basics I know, and what really is going on with their relationship. Dale sighed and basically summed up that besides what I know, there is a lot of backstory I'm unfamiliar with that they never told me about simply because it was never the time nor the place to. What I've always known is that my father was fairly normal when he was young, a little shy but fantastic academically, played sports occasionally, had a close-knit relationship with his brothers, and meeting my mom in high school junior year made everything go downhill. What I didn't know was that my father was a guiding figure for his 2 younger brothers and was generally seen as one of the nicest people, with a bright future ahead of him. My grandparents adored him and he even became a little bit of a golden child, but no one minded. The reason his family doesn't respect him is what happened to his behavior when my mother got attached to him. It first started simple. My mother acted rude and distant to the family. They weren't huge fans, but my father loved her so they tolerated it. She became possessive and slowly isolated my father and convinced him to give up his ambitions and goals. The family became concerned and spent a long time trying to talk to him and convince him to leave. My father didn't budge and began to lash out. When I was born, my extended family tried to talk to my father about my mother's attitude. My father was angry and threatened to report them for harassment. He was in denial about her behavior. When Dale's wife was having fertility issues, my mother messaged her appalling and cruel things. When Dale was pissed and went to talk to my father, he told Dale to drop it and even justified it. Dale punched him and the police almost got involved. Dale hated him going forwards. John grew to hate him when my mother insulted his son due to mild physical disabilities. My father cracked a joke about what she said. John hated him then. Finally, Bill, who always idolized my father, tried to inform my father that my mother made a pass at him and urged divorce. My father responded with a maddening call of utter hate and relationship-ending words. To sum it all up, the more time my father spent with my mother, the more he began to repeat her attitude. When they showed signs of abuse to me and tried to intervene, my father threatened to lie, to accuse them of worse things. My mother had money and lawyers and could make their lives hell if they tried, and my father would gladly let her. They were stuck and could only do so much at a time. The older members of the family, like the grandparents, great and uncles and such, believe in the traditional mindset of family sticking together no matter what, while the generations further down want to keep a distance from him. They're all stuck between a rock and a hard place. There's more. They told me out. It was all essentially that my father died on the hill for my mom, ruining his relationship with his brothers in the process. And when she died and destroyed him, he probably had to realize it was all for nothing. My grandparents seem to not want to accept the fact that he was lost, or maybe they hope he can fix his life. Who knows? This was a lot to process and was only confirmed by my father himself when he called me to ask about family therapy with us. I cut to the chase and asked if what I heard was true. He said yes. I would have agreed to maybe some family therapy, but now I have no idea. After finding 2 tampons and other clues, I uncovered a disturbing truth behind my husband's secret meetings. Original post: I, 29F, have been with my husband, 30M, for 7 years, married for 4. I've never had reason to suspect he was unfaithful to me or even remotely dissatisfied with our marriage. He likes to joke that we're still living the honeymoon phase nearly 5 years and 2 kids in. I wouldn't have questioned that, or him, were it not for a surprise I found in his car last month. When buckling our daughter into her car seat, I noticed something slotted between the cushions. I pulled it out and saw that it was a tampon. This wouldn't have been so unusual had I not had an IUD that has stopped my period for the past year, and I didn't even recognize the wrapper style. I brought it to my husband's attention, and he didn't seem to understand what it was, let alone why I was holding it, until I told him where I'd found it and why I was almost certain it wasn't mine. He shrugged and said it probably belonged to his coworker, Fiona. It's not uncommon for my husband to carpool to lunch with his coworkers, and we're both fairly close to Fiona and her husband, so I figured it was entirely possible the tampon had slipped out of her purse whenever he had driven with them or offered her a ride. No big deal. I put it out of my mind until we had dinner with Fiona and her husband a couple weeks later. I had sincerely wanted to believe my husband. I just couldn't get over the way it had been tucked in the seat and how my husband had seemed not to have any regard for it whatsoever. Maybe playing dumb. I don't know. I did something that I now feel kind of crazy for doing. I faked an emergency and asked Fiona if she had any tampons while we were out together. She handed me one almost identical to the tampon I'd found in our back seat, and I breathed a sigh of relief. So the tampon there was probably the same tampon here, and in all likelihood, there was an innocent explanation as to why it had been left in the back seat in the first place. I thought I'd seen the last of the out-of-place feminine hygiene products until I found another tampon this morning. This time in my sock drawer. I feel physically ill at the thought of my husband having an affair and even more nauseated at the thought that the woman might have left these tampons out for me to find. If it was my husband's coworker, why would she give herself away by offering me one the other night? In any other situation I would want to talk to my husband about this, but I feel too sick and embarrassed to approach him with what I've found. What should I do? Relevant comments. I've had a period of 30 years and never put a tampon in a sock drawer. Trust your gut and get cameras. Neither have I. I've considered so many explanations for the tampons that wouldn't implicate my husband, but none of them make sense really. I'm terrified to set up a camera if it means confirming what I suspect right now. Has Fiona been over to your house and had time to plant the tampon? She's been to our house many times and vice versa. To my knowledge, She wasn't over any time in the past week, so if she planted that second tampon, she had to have found a window of time when I wasn't home. Anytime she and her husband visit, we all stay downstairs, and you'd have to go really out of your way to make it to our bedroom, that is around our dogs, over the safety gate, past the other bedrooms. Not saying it's impossible, but definitely tricky to do on a quick bathroom break, I would guess. How old are your kids? Could they have found a tampon and put it in a random place? 2 and almost 4. Both have a mischievous streak, so I didn't want to rule out the possibility of one of them moving stuff around, but I can't imagine how they'd get their hands on 1, possibly 2 random tampons that I never bought. Update post. Contemplating every possible source of 2 tampons has been my personal hell for the past few weeks, but I wanted to share an update. Shortly after posting here, I told my sister what happened. The tampon in the back seat and the sock drawer, my husband's cluelessness, the tampon from Fiona, and all the things I suspected but didn't want to believe. We compared tampons, save for the back seat one I had already discarded. And they were a match, just in different absorbences. I hadn't left either in a place where my husband or daughters would have found them and moved them around. My daughters didn't know what they were or where they had come from. My sister was convinced it was Fiona, either fucking my husband, fucking with me, or both. Direct confrontation of either party still seemed like a bad idea, so she suggested inviting Fiona and her husband over for our Labor Day barbecue. Unfortunately, they already had plans. My sister and I agreed that it was too soon for cameras without any other evidence, so it was just a waiting game from there. Watching my husband for any changed behavior, there was none. Our house for any misplaced foreign items, there were none. And even the girls for any new friends they might have met. My sister's husband was adamant on this last point, and partly why he was inclined to believe that the tampons were harmless. If anything had been happening in or around our home, he said, it would be nearly impossible to keep it from me and the girls, since my husband was the one taking them to and from daycare and most other activities during the week. I felt a good bit of consolation in that. It wasn't until my younger daughter, 2yo, came down with something last week that I felt any differently. I wanted to be the one home taking care of her, but my husband insisted that I stay at work while he stayed home with her. I was okay with that. My sister and her husband figured it was a good sign that he would take the time off at a moment's notice, and at that point, we were all already beginning to put the tampon fiasco behind us. By the 3rd or 4th day, I was just happy to see a near-healthy child and a husband who was helping see her through it. Toward the end of that week though, I came home to something strange. The toddler that I'd left that morning in an old PJ set was now dressed in a onesie I'd never seen before, with a tiny clip in her hair. I can't say I have the sharpest memory, but I have a pretty good sense of what my kids wear on a day-to-day basis, and particularly what kinds of clothes they wear. I'd sworn off the full-length sleep suits with snaps across the front long before we'd ever had our second. The long snaps are just a pain in the ass and a no-go for efficient diaper changes, IMO. It's just not something I would dress her in, and my husband knows as much. He doesn't plan for, or buy the girls' clothes, and he certainly doesn't accessorize them, so I was bewildered. And kind of floored at the thought of someone around our sick child without my knowledge. I didn't think twice, and I went straight to my husband to ask if anyone had been over to see him or the girls. He seemed confused, like before, and asked me why I would think that. It had just been him and the kids all day. I asked him again, if someone had so much as stopped by to say hello, and he denied it. He told me to calm down. I might have lashed out and come forward with the accusations right then and there, but our older daughter was in the room, and she sensed something was up. In a calmer voice, I asked him a 3rd time if anyone had been around our children, and my husband swore that the girls hadn't been around anyone but him. He also denied buying new clothes or doing anyone's hair. With our daughter in the room and my emotions all over the place, I decided to leave it. I couldn't make sense of it then, and it hardly seems clearer now, after I've driven myself half crazy with explanations that aren't adding up. Relevant comments. To answer a couple questions. My 2yo can only string together a couple words at a time, and when I ask her about her time with daddy or her clothes bow, she answers based on the cues I give her, for example, who gave you that pretty bow? And she repeats pretty bow back to me, or mama daddy, over and over. My older daughter, almost 4, was at daycare that morning, and she can't recall anything different from that day. Doesn't remember the PJ change or the hair clip, so my guess is she was changed sometime that morning, but I'm not totally sure. I have a 45 minutes commute to work, so stopping by for lunch isn't really feasible. My sister has been kind enough to leave work and drive past a few times here and there, and she hasn't seen anything out of the ordinary. We have a Ring camera at the front door, and I've got the app on my phone with notifs on. Nothing there yet. If anyone has recommendations for more discreet surveillance, I'd be open to it. I'm just the least tech-savvy person and worry another camera will be easy to detect. LOL edit. And yes, we get our carbon monoxide detectors tested regularly. Is it possible one of the hair clips came from daycare? I could see the hair clip being a possibility, but less likely on the onesie. My younger daughter hadn't been to daycare in days, and if either of them had returned with something like that before I would have noticed, especially since it was the kind of onesie I hate with a passion. LOL. People comment that they can't wait to find out the ending to this saga. My money's on the Hollywood horror ending. Hopefully dreamed up the dogs too so I can finally stop picking up their imaginary shits and whatnot. Final update post. After nearly losing my mind over a hair clip and a onesie, I realized I wasn't getting anywhere with the accusations and half-baked guesswork. I'd gotten so absorbed in the paranoia and misery of my situation that I wasn't sleeping, eating or caring for my kids the way I should have been. And I wasn't getting any answers. So I decided to pull the trigger on the hidden cameras and have them shipped to my sister's house, with my BL agreeing to help with the install setup over at mine. Before the cameras were ever delivered though, I got my long-awaited confirmation last week. A Ring notification had alerted me to motion at the front door while I was at work. Half expecting to see a delivery person, pet or lawn care salesman for the 15th time, you can imagine my surprise when I saw a clip of a young woman leading my daughter into the house hand in hand, with my husband and other daughter close behind them. The girls were supposed to be in daycare and my husband was at work. The woman, as far as I knew, was living 2 states away with a court order keeping her there. I immediately called my husband to ask him what the fuck this woman was doing in our house. He didn't answer, so I texted it to him. Even in his stupidity, he probably realized he had messed up by going through the front door, knew I had gotten the Ring notification, and wanted to delay the inevitable. By the 5th or 6th subsequent call though, he did pick up. The woman on the camera was my husband's sister. As I would come to find out later, she was the likely source of both tampons, the onesie, and the bow. She is also a registered sex offender and a recovering addict, who spent the better part of her adolescence and young adulthood coercing the silence of another one of my husband's family members after she had molested them. I hadn't seen or heard from her in years, and from the way my husband talked about her, I didn't expect I ever would. But here she was, in our house, with our children. Suffice to say I was livid. It wasn't an affair at all and still, somehow infinitely more disgusting knowing who it was and why all of this had been happening. Apparently my Sil, fresh off another stint in rehab, had wanted to reconnect and make amends with people she'd hurt, and my husband was high on that list. My husband didn't want me to know or, worse, try to keep her family, our children, away from her, so they'd been meeting in secret, often at our house when I was at work. They would enter through the garage, in my husband's car, so the Ring camera at the front door wouldn't tip me off. She spent the night on a weekend I had been on a business trip and slept in our bed. She babysat our girls on a night my husband told me he had dropped them off at his parents'. She bought the girls clothes and dressed my youngest in the onesie and bow that my husband had promised in his life I had dressed her in myself. My husband swore this was all in my head. The tampons, the onesie, the bow, and all the rest. He was perfectly content to watch me agonize for weeks over a woman he insisted didn't exist. Shrugging off each progressively more unsettling discovery like it was news to him and telling me I was being irrational. He insinuated that I was experiencing postpartum depression, 2 years after I'd given birth. 4 years later, I told him that one of my biggest fears for motherhood was to suffer from PPD like my mother had with me, to not be fully present for our babies and be left with a world of guilt and regret as they grew older. He told me I wasn't sleeping enough, that I missed the girls too much, that I needed to take a step back and reevaluate the state of my mental health. I gave him the benefit of the doubt because he was my husband, and because no other version of events made sense. Now, after a month of this mindfuck, I have nothing to show for my trust but this pathetic situation. And a lot of anger.